Let me get this straight. You blew up a building.
2 CIs and the CEO of 22andU.
Two competing federal agencies with the same mission.
I don't understand why those Fed a-holes are so darn mean.
To protect the public from the scourge of dangerous misinformation.
You know those bum idiots. This is all them. We had a solid case.
The word entrapment, not even in their vocabulary.
The explosives we provided were fake.
Sworn to a duty to always tell the truth.
We have no indication at this time that this was a deliberate act.
We're all being transferred.
To where?
The only place currently with openings. Alaska.
Good morning.
Welcome to the office, huh?
And we got the retro feel. You know, the funny about federal buildings, they're all different, but they're still somehow all the same.
Oh, good morning, Agent Walker. At the coffee station. We actually drew straws before he got here, and I won, so we get to work together.
Let's get started. Let's see if we can't stir something up.
Let's give it a minute. I like to warm up the truth muscles a little coffee beforehand.
Well, what do you want to do first?
What do we have for a surveillance van?
Oh, wow. I got a Ford Explorer. We don't have a surveillance van.
Do you put up many cases here?
Cases?
Yeah, cases. We're the tip of the spear when it comes to protecting American democracy.
You really believe this? You really believe that people posting crap online is going to cause our country to crumble?
I think the work that we do is important.
We don't have a surveillance van.
Me and some people got one. We've never needed one.
We need a surveillance van. We need a big case or a CI who can lead us to a big case.
What do you need the van for?
Surveillance.
CIs, or confidential informants, are the lifeblood of any good law enforcement agency. Public posts on social media are one of the best ways to find CIs. Agents would never use coercion or take things out of context to try and persuade someone to become a confidential informant.
The new Taylor Swift single is absolute fire. I'm just seeing a lot of incendiary and violent language here.
Agents always need to be on their toes and ready to make snap decisions.
Is there anything I can do for you guys? Actually, David, there is something you can do for us.
Chicken nuggies.
Chicken nuggies.
What?
Cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger. McDonald's cheeseburger.
Burger King.
Burger King cheeseburger.
Flame broiled.
Chicken nugget.
Oh, baby, know you're gonna like it. I wanna be your beaver pilot. Said, honey, know you're gonna like it. I wanna be.
Awesome, right?
Is this a loner?
This thing's totally legit.
What is this? It's got windows!
All right. Welcome, welcome. It's Friday. And there we go. I should be live now. I would hope. Let's see. There we go. Somehow my mic shut off for some reason. Hello. Oh, I know I was muted. Yeah, I turned it on, but it decided it didn't want to work. So, all right. Sorry, had to run away for a second. And all right, check this. Well, I got everything queued up, but that's weird shit. And we've got people trying to hurl rocks at cops. This is Los Angeles. This is a bunch of people protesting the feds, I guess, or yeah. And they've broken up a bunch of rocks, and now they're throwing, and I think this is old footage, actually. Yeah, this footage was a little bit ago. I was watching it. Oh, nice. Well, we will go over cross. We're going to go long tonight. We're going to go as long as we can. And we're going to watch this because today was, I think, the turning point day. I don't think there's any audio on this. So today was definitely the turning point day of the trial. Oh, they're moving in, though. They are moving in. It's okay. So let's stick with this for a minute because they're moving in. They're going to get, looks like they're going to, hello. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay. We've got, Yellowstone sounds fun. Oh, come on. So, are they just pushing them down the street? Looks like they're just like pushing them down the street. So I had as we're watching this, I watch X throughout the day. Oh, there they go some more. Hey, dang it. So I'm on X when I'm, take a little break here, surf the X, go back to work, and I kind of see the difference in folks who follow this case. And you have two camps. You really have two camps, and I don't see many posts from people that don't know what's happening in the trial. There's people that think that Karen Read is guilty, and there are people that think Karen Read is innocent. Right? Oh, that's cool. Oh, neat. Oh, yeah, no, it is baby time right now. We've got baby moose popping up in the neighborhood. We've got so yeah, it's definitely baby time in the wilderness. Oh, they are pushing them down the street. Maybe time to go home. People chucking rocks back at. I mean, what? Why throw rocks? Why? This doesn't make sense. So anyway, so you get two different types of people, and I wanted to kind of point out a few. So, because I had a little interaction with one of the folks that thinks Karen Read is guilty. We'll kind of start out with that because I just kind of want to show you what most of them look like. And look like what kind of character are we talking about? And so watch that. Let's see. So this person's account is, and these guys are just doing their thing. So I'm going to switch to this. So this is Shutterbug. Shutterbug is an account on X that was created in March of 2025. They got 141 followers, and they follow 250 people. And they post stuff like this. extra, extra. ARCCA has flipped and just proven the Commonwealth's case. So they're basically trolls. That's what you get on this other side. And I'm going to show you through his account here. So he accused somebody of being a sock account or something. Let's see. And yeah, so somebody said, and then so Yuri Bukwacki, who's, probably another troll account, but on the other side said, "Oh, love all these sock accounts." So I'm like, hey, dude, like, I'm not a sock account. I do a recap every night in here in YouTube, starts 11 p.m. I'm going to start out tonight's show highlighting this stupid post right here, thinking that ARCCA had proven the Commonwealth's case, which is just stupid. I'm also going to point out your Anon account is indicative of most anti-small following weirdos, which is basically what they are. So this is a response, just a stupid meme, right? Because that's all these weirdos have. And let's take a look. What kind of value, what kind of stirring commentary does Shutterbug come up with? Well, he retweets this person who's a complete dumb shit. Spade and Carney, which is supposed to be a take on Aiden. ARCCA just disproved all the freak Aaron Reed nonsense they've been spewing for years. You'll see in a little bit they did not do that. Like, this person thinks because the shoe didn't come off, that's the way it is. But you see this, and they've all got these weird little badges on their thing. And a lot of them are just, now this person, is actually, says their name, but a lot of them are just anonymous, weird people, right? And Stephanie, darn it, I wish I could see, I can't see X comments for some reason. I appreciate you being here. I really do. And I'm going to try again. Maybe if I bring up my X thing, I can see the comments. Can I? Maybe? Hang on a second. Let's see if I can actually find your comment. That would be great. And no, of course not. I don't know why I can't see X comments. That bugs me. That really bugs me. But I thank you for commenting. I wish I could see what you're commenting. Oh, it drives me crazy. That really drives me crazy that I can't see the X comments. I don't know why that is. It's so crazy. So yeah, and then I come across folks like this, and this is a regular person who supports Karen, who has their name out there. Yeah, they don't have huge followings either, but they post pictures of themselves. They they're not afraid, I guess, to say, hey, this is me. I am here. I support Karen Reed. I don't think she's guilty. I think she's innocent. And they have the balls to say that and be public about it, and not a anonymous goofball. And I could say worse, but I won't at this moment. I will be considerate. But anyway, all right, today. Oh, it was ARCCA day. We got our ARCCA folks. So let's just jump right into it, because we've got Dr. Wolf to start us out. Share the tab. Oh, let's see. Do we have a transcript? Do we have a transcript? No, not yet, but that's okay because we're going to watch a lot of it. We're going to.
Good morning.
We are going to speed it up.
So, sir, we're going to try and keep the air conditioning on this morning. So I'm going to ask you to speak really loudly into that microphone. And Mr. Jackson, you do so as well, please. Okay.
All right.
Presented with a hazard. So how do drivers typically respond? What are their actions, and how long does that take to
or engage both domestic and international?
Grab a water. I'll be right back.
Yes.
As the director of accident reconstruction, do you specialize in anything other than just accident reconstruction? Anything having to do with human factors?
Yes. So my other specialties in addition to accident reconstruction are lighting and human factors.
What is? Give us a 25-word overview of human factors. What is that?
So to give you a good example of that is and again, this is a case that I commonly see, but let's say you're driving down the road at night. It's an unlit roadway. You're relying on your vehicle headlights to see the roadway ahead, right? And you've got a pedestrian that is entering the roadway. And you want to have an understanding based upon the lighting conditions, how much sky illumination there is, their clothing, right? When would a driver recognize that individual on the roadway? So that's where it starts from the vision aspect of human factors. Then we get into driver response, right? So the driver is presented with a hazard. So how do drivers typically respond? What are their actions, and how long does that take to avoid and initiate a reaction?
That's human factors. Can you do the same thing and give us an explanation for accident reconstruction just in the broadest sense? What is that discipline?
I think a very simple definition of accident reconstruction.
So since last year, Dr. Wolf has been promoted to Director of Accident Reconstruction. So that's really cool. Good for him because he deserves it.
Is the application of physics and engineering science to collision events.
What role do you take as the director of accident reconstruction for ARCCA as contracts come in or engagements come in?
Well, my scope in cases can vary greatly. As I just mentioned, I could have a case where I'm assessing the conspicuity of a pedestrian and a driver's response time. It could be a 50-car pileup on a highway. I'm trying to figure out a sequence of events. It could be a rear-end collision where a seat back has failed in the vehicle and the occupant has sustained injuries, and we want to have an understanding of the crush, the damage, the forces. So again, it can vary case to case.
Do you engage in reconstruction or attempt to engage in reconstruction of all sorts of passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles?
Yes.
What about motorcycles?
Yes.
Bicycles?
Yes.
Involving pedestrians and sometimes involving no pedestrians?
Yes, I see all types of collisions.
How many cases, if you have a number in mind, have you been a part of in terms of engaging in accident reconstruction broadly?
That's something that I don't track, but I've been with the company now for over 8 years. So at this point, if I had to estimate, it's well over 1,000 at this point.
What education, training, and background you have that allows you to perform the duties that you've described for these jurors in terms of accident reconstruction and human factors analyses?
In terms of, are you looking at additional training?
No, let's start with your education. I want education, training, and background, but we can do them in order.
Okay, yeah, so we'll go back to 2012. I received a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from James Madison University, along with a minor in mathematics. Courses included physics, statics, dynamics, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, your engineering sciences. Subsequent to that, I then went on to pursue my PhD in electrical and computer engineering with a concentration in electromagnetics and photonics. So my coursework while doing my PhD included optoelectronics, semiconductor physics, basically how to guide light on semiconductor devices.
Did you write a dissertation to get your PhD?
Yes.
What was the subject matter broadly of the dissertation that you drafted?
So my dissertation focused on a technology called smart glass. So you may have seen this technology where if you've seen a pane of glass that is transparent, somebody flips a switch and it goes opaque. That's a type of smart glass technology. So my PhD involved developing a new type of novel, what we coined optofluidic smart glass. So we are using geometric structures that we've optically designed to create a very reflective surface or medium, if you will. And then through the introduction of various fluids, we can then modulate the amount of visible light and electromagnetic energy that is passing through or being reflected. So not just visible light, but also energy that you can't see. As part of that process, I ended up prototyping these structures with a 3D printer that was capable of printing 3D printable polymers. And as we kind of got towards the end of my work, we looked at how we could scale this up on a larger scale. And we ultimately ended up researching and doing tests with a material known as polymethyl methacrylate, which is PMMA or acrylic.
What relevance does PMMA play in terms of this case?
So, with respect to this case, the outer lens and the clear plastic diffusers of the taillight.
You're right. I don't have any sound. Okay, let me go back. So we heard his dissertation on computer glass and smart glass and all that. As I was saying to myself, obviously, I wasn't talking to anybody else. So I am not a dumb person. I've done a lot of things. I played music in my life. I've learned about computers. I'm pretty decent on that. I can do filming and film editing and put together construction projects. And I know, stuff on Excel. But this is a whole nother level. This guy is a whole nother level of smart, man. I mean, holy crap.
Lights on the
That's just crazy.
are comprised entirely of polymethyl methacrylate, or that PMMA material.
The same material that was the subject of your dissertation.
Correct.
What additional training and experience do you have as it relates to accident reconstruction beyond your BS and your PhD?
So certainly the 8 years of work that I've had at ARCCA has certainly trained and taught me a lot over the last 8 years. Like I said, I've seen hundreds of collisions, all different types of accidents. But in addition to that, I continue to take courses through Northwestern University in crash reconstruction, human factors and lighting, heavy vehicle forensics, heavy vehicle EDR downloads, Bosch data retrieval and black box downloads, photogrammetry. So a number of continuing education.
So, guys, ridiculous. All right. So let's go in just a little forward.
Correct?
Correct.
And on the
Now we're going to actually let's go back a little bit.
Motion of an object or a body.
Have you done any testing as it relates to kinematics and the interaction between pedestrians and motor vehicles?
Yes.
How many times have you engaged in such an analysis?
Numerous times. We frequently and routinely do testing at ARCCA.
ARCCA has several different disciplines within it. What are some of those different disciplines in addition to accident reconstruction?
And
forward.
We'll analyze the crash forces.
You, as the director of accident reconstruction at ARCCA.
Very common, yes.
As a matter of fact, it probably would be uncommon if you didn't do that.
A simple example of it is, let's just say we have or deflected some deformation to it. Right, would be a good example.
Undertaken to determine the forces that would be, for instance, in your example, in that site, the forces at play.
Measuring the displacement, we'd be able to calculate acceleration, things of that nature from that test data.
The tests that you undertake, are they generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
What are quasi-static tests?
So a quasi-static test would be like the example I just gave you, where we have basically the bumper would be stationary, right? And now we're pulling on it to determine how much force it takes to bend it. So that'd be an example of a quasi-static.
Deform a bumper. Also, there are forces at play, I'm assuming, in terms of injury. Facts.
All right.
Damage fits a
I don't know why we go to sidebar, but we'll figure that out in a second.
Objective evidence, utilize physics, maybe some calculations to determine whose version is most consistent based upon the damage and the roadway evidence.
Is that an accepted methodology in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
In other cases,
Reasonable
would you
degree of
undertake
accident reconstruction certainty?
an engagement to determine whether or not the physics or the physical evidence matches a particular scenario or is inconsistent with that scenario? Have you been able to ultimately reach conclusions and opinions to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty in those cases?
Yes.
Is that normally what you're seeking, to ultimately come to an opinion or a conclusion about those scenarios or circumstances?
Yes.
Are your opinions and conclusions based on your education, your training, the background and experience that you've explained to the jurors?
Yes.
Is it also in furtherance of the scientific methodologies that you employ in order to come to those opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
And are those generally accepted in the scientific and accident reconstruction community as a proper methodology to come to opinions and conclusions of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Have you been qualified in other courts to testify in the area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Let's talk about how you began your work in this particular case.
Yes.
When you were initially retained in connection with this case, were you hired by the defense?
No.
Did you know who we were?
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
This makes no sense.
Sure. Were you hired by anybody affiliated with the defense?
No.
At that time, did you know any of the names of the defense?
No.
At the time that you were hired to or engaged in this case, did you even know the name Karen Reed? Did you know any of the names of any of the parties?
Did you know the names of any of the parties? Oh, that's objectionable. No, it's not. This Bev.
Sure.
Bev's rules. It's Bev's rules. It's Bev's world. Bev gets to do whatever Bev wants. Because she is a computer.
Initially,
All right,
facts,
so
and a series of data, and ask, just look at these facts and look at these data and make a few determinations about accident reconstruction.
all right, so we'll get through this. So this is basically what happens here is they talk about how he got the case.
Try to
It
bend
said,
it, it's not going to be.
so it says, how did you get this? They said this other agency brought us this stuff and said, you know, this is what they say happened. Can you, we give you a broad path to figure out what exactly happened. We don't know what happened. We'd like you to figure out what happened. Can you try and help us figure out what happened? And so that was what ARCCA started.
The thicknesses of those are about 3 millimeters.
Is 5 millimeters of PMMC, have I got that right, PMMA?
You call it acrylic. That's the more common.
So yeah, so they're talking about the taillight, how it's constructed right here.
Is 5 millimeters of that acrylic, that outer lens material, is that considered thick or thin in terms of just sort of what we'd see on a taillight?
I would describe that as a pretty thick piece of plastic. It's certainly by no means, you can't, if you had a segment of it and you try to bend it, it's not going to bend.
In addition to that outer taillight material, that acrylic, in terms of the information that you received, did the interior acrylic also have damage to it?
Yes, those clear diffusers that, again, there's 2 rows of those, and they also went up vertically. Those were shattered and broken as well.
Was that important to you in your ultimate analysis?
This is very good information here. Remember the diffusers. The diffusers come in handy later.
Be in trouble 31. I think we might be getting some of your analysis.
Anywhere on the tailgate area or the liftgate area?
Yes, there was
okay.
quarter panel
Scratches
around section of the bumper cover as it's going from the rear to the right side. There were some superficial scrapes in that area.
Did you know any other damage or deformation to the Lexus? Deformation in the tail, the liftgate, the bumper, anything like that?
No.
Is it common in a vehicle-pedestrian collision that there is some sort of bumper deformation that's associated with a vehicle-pedestrian incident?
That can certainly occur if a pedestrian is in a normal upright position. You can certainly get displacement of the bumper.
Did you see any displacement or panel deformation on the Lexus?
No.
Is it more common that there's panel displacement or deformation if the collision is above, say, 10 or 15 miles an hour?
Yes.
During your review of all the investigative materials, did you note any items of evidence that were recovered or claimed to have been recovered on the bumper itself?
I recall there were 2 or 3 apparent glass fragments.
What's the significance of that? Let me ask it differently. Is there any glass in the taillight assembly? Any shattered glass anywhere on the Lexus? Meaning panes of glass, the back window, quarter panel windows, anything like that?
No.
Do you have any?
Talking about the glass. Now we're going to get into the initial analysis.
Of what the Massachusetts State Police theory of the case was based on the investigative reports that you had received.
Sustained.
Did you perform an accident reconstruction analysis to determine whether or not the damage to the Lexus, that taillight housing material,
It doesn't matter what he objects to. It's always sustained. It's so nuts. It's crazy.
was consistent with an interaction with a
We
pedestrian?
get it.
Yes.
Specifically, did you perform an accident reconstruction to determine whether the damage to the Lexus was consistent with an interaction with John O'Keefe based on the injuries that you were aware of?
Yes.
Did you evaluate whether the investigative theories regarding, let me ask it a different way. Did you consider the possibility of Mr. O'Keefe's head striking the taillight?
Yes.
Did you consider the possibility of Mr. O'Keefe's arm striking the taillight?
Yes.
Did you entertain the possibility that Mr. O'Keefe's center of mass, his body, struck the taillight?
Yes.
All those were considered last time in trial number 1.
Before we get into the initial testing, were you able to come to opinions and conclusions concerning those things that I just mentioned?
Yes.
Did you also entertain the possibility that a drinking glass could have damaged the taillight?
Yes.
Were these some of the things that you were sort of was left open to you to decide yourself?
Yes.
Did you later provide all of those opinions and conclusions in a report to the entity that hired you?
Yes.
And your understanding that those reports were then later supplied to both sides here in this case?
That was my understanding, yes.
So both sides got it. So the jury knows that both sides got the reports from last time, the stuff that they did.
Did you testify about those initial testing opinions and conclusions at a proceeding last year?
Yes.
Let's talk for a second about that initial testing that you conducted in connection with this case. When approximately did you begin your testing? And I'm going to phrase it as your initial testing.
From what I recall, it would have been late 2023 into early 2024.
Did you become aware that there was a drinking glass that was found at the scene?
Yes.
And
looking at the evidence, as I mentioned earlier, when we're looking at that quarter panel taillight, we have an isolated region of damage. And looking at the additional evidence in terms of a broken drinking glass at the scene, we wanted to do testing to determine if a small object or projectile such as the drinking glass could induce damage that was consistent with that we saw on the subject Lexus.
Were you able to reach an opinion and or conclusion as it relates to whether or not there is a possibility that the drinking glass or a drinking glass could cause the type of damage that you saw on the Lexus?
Yes.
Given everything else in your investigation, are you concluding that the glass was responsible for the taillight damage?
No.
However, you did seek to determine whether it was possible, correct? Okay.
Sustained.
I'll ask it a different way, Your Honor. What testing did you undertake in furtherance of that specific answering that?
Cannon 30 and
so here you go.
Damage the taillight.
Right. So we designed a pressurized cannon that was capable of firing the drinking glass into the taillight at various speeds. We aimed for speeds of 30 and 40 miles an hour. Our
There it is,
the
cannon.
37 miles per hour. And we found that in the 37 mile an hour impact, and again, this is to emulate or simulate an individual throwing a drinking glass. The purpose of the cannon, if you will, was to be able to hone in on a speed precisely and obviously aim for that target. So it would just serve as a means of getting that projectile to the taillight in a means that we could measure it. And what we observed.
Okay, so we get to, let's just go ahead, because we've got a lot to get to here. Oh, we don't get to see video. We don't get to see video of the cannon firing the drinking glass, but we do get to see
you are looking at
high-speed cameras. So this is
video just after the contact with the taillight on the
see
right.
the glass breaking,
damage to the taillight after the glass had been fired.
damage.
And if we could look at the next exhibit with the course permission.
Test the
This
glass
is
striking
37, and this really made it look like this was a very good possibility, and it's still a possibility. It's still a possibility that the taillight was broken with a glass.
in the area where the
is.
the turn signal indicator is, so the right where it meets the red portion of the lens and the clear portion of the lens. That's about where the impact point was.
You see, all this was gone in, hers. All this stuff on the side was all gone. Well, here this is still partially
You
intact.
can see that a
So-
large portion of the outer red assembly, lens cover is missing and fractured. The clear portion of the part of the outer lens to the turn signal indicator is also fractured, as well as the underlying clear diffusers in that assembly.
Would your testing in both of these scenarios, the 31 mile an hour test and the 37 mile an hour test, represent an accepted methodology for controlling for aim, velocity, impact site, and those issues, if you will, as it relates to testing of this sort?
Yes, we were able to control those variables.
And is that an accepted methodology in the area or the field of accident reconstruction?
Absolutely, yes.
When you
Okay, so now we're going to skip by. We somehow reason have a sidebar here. Let's see. Why do we have a sidebar?
approach,
Okay.
Let's see.
And we were trying to figure out.
When was that? About the potential of retaining you?
Yes.
At some point, subsequent to that initial discussion in February of 2025, did we have another discussion about the potential of retaining you?
Yes.
Tell me about that. When was that?
From what I recall, it was sometime in March, and we were trying to figure out.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Did I ask you if you were available to be retained by the defense?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yep.
She really wants to limit what they can get into about his status, doesn't she? They
Yeah,
came back from
she
that first
does.
sidebar where he'd been.
Were you asked
Anyway,
to do anything,
all
to
right.
review anything from the Commonwealth and any of their experts in relation to testing that was undertaken by them regarding the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
What were you asked to do?
My understanding is that we were asked to review and evaluate the report and analysis conducted by Dr. Welcher.
Did you receive Dr. Welcher's reports?
Yes.
Did you receive his raw data?
Yes.
Did you receive his 140 plus page PowerPoint?
Yes.
And did you undertake a review of that, all of that data, in order to evaluate that data?
Yes.
What methodology did you undertake at that juncture before you began any testing? Just your review process. What methodology did you undertake in terms of your review of his evaluations and his opinions and conclusions?
Well, I think when reviewing his report and his analysis, I looked to his opinions, and then I looked to what's the basis and the foundation to those opinions, right? How did he ultimately arrive at those final conclusions? So I'm looking for the methodologies that he followed, what testing did he do, what type of experiments, what type of data analysis, ultimately to provide that opinion.
Ultimately, did you prepare a PowerPoint presentation in furtherance of memorializing your review and opinions and conclusions of his evaluation and testing?
Yes.
Did you bring that with you today?
Yes.
Do you have that with you on your computer, or are we going to run the PowerPoint?
It's on this computer up here with me.
With the court's permission? For the time being. Have with you, by the way, just a spotlight of that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, going on that.
Yes.
Describe what we're looking at.
So this was Dr. Welcher's opinion.
This is from Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation, slide 121, in which he's indicating that there are lacerations on John O'Keefe's right arm and forearm, and he's indicated in this slide that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX570.
In coming to your opinions and conclusions.
So Dr. Welcher saying that it's consistent with the taillight.
This is a mouthful.
But notice he doesn't say, he says it's the only thing he concludes is it's consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight. That's all that's his major conclusion.
And conclusions of Dr. Welcher in conducting your analysis and your ultimate testing.
And, I mean, what does that actually do?
And his PowerPoint in reaching your conclusions and opinions, ultimately in this case.
I don't know that I relied on. Certainly, I utilized them to have an understanding of
Were they
what
trash?
his basis was for his opinion and what his opinion was. Ultimately, at ARCCA, we did our own independent testing to evaluate that.
So just to be clear, I'm not asking Dr. Wolf if you agreed with his opinions and conclusions. I'm simply asking, did you rely on those in order to come to your opinions and conclusions? Did you incorporate them?
Sustained is truthful.
Did you agree ultimately with Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Sustained.
What? What's wrong with
You
that?
certainly were aware of what his opinions and conclusions were, correct?
Before Mr. Jackson on that one.
Were you aware of Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
Are some of those opinions and conclusions represented in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Are some of them represented on this slide in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
You indicated
Bev's world, it's Bev's court. She can just, whatever she wants to decide is not allowed. It's not allowed.
this slide indicates that the
In any other court of law, probably be allowed. In Bev's court, no. You
location and
don't get
orientation
that.
of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arms are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight, correct?
Correct.
Do you agree with that?
Are the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm lacerations?
That would be an opinion from my colleague, Dr. Rentra.
Have you ever heard the phrase abrasion?
Yes.
In your opinion, are the injuries to John O'Keefe's right arm
I
described,
like
described
this.
as
I like this right here because
lacerations or abrasions?
I don't have an opinion on that.
I'm not going to get into it. That's not my area. Yeah. And when we get into cross, I got some opinions on what's going to happen tomorrow. I have some predictions on Monday.
Slide number 2, please.
All right.
So he did.
Okay, I'll be right
initially,
back.
It appeared that he did a static
One
test, if you will,
second. Watch.
just demonstrating holding his right arm out adjacent to the rear taillights on the right side of an exemplar Lexus to demonstrate his theory of how the arm contacted the taillight.
What is a static test?
No, so I'm sustaining that. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
What is a
And I'm gonna
static
strike
test? Is a problem with the question? What?
What testing did you note that Dr. Welcher did with regard to this particular photograph? What is a static test?
Well, in a static test, that neither the arm or the vehicle is moving. It's just he's aligning his right arm adjacent to show how his arm aligns to the geometry and the dimensions of the Lexus.
Did Dr. Welcher appear to be wearing similar clothing as John O'Keefe was wearing on January 29, 2022?
Yes.
Was there any significance or purpose for that, in your opinion?
In this test, no.
Did you identify any limitations with regard to this sort of testing undertaken by Dr. Welcher?
Well, it's very basic in that the only thing that this demonstrates is that you can get your right arm to align with the taillight. Beyond that,
Yes.
it doesn't tell you anything with respect to what happens to the arm when it makes contact with the taillight, right? What's the motion of the arm? What's the damage to the taillight? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the forces of the arm? So it doesn't answer any of those other questions. The only question it answers is, does the arm align with the taillight?
You're aware that John O'Keefe was 6'1", correct?
Correct.
Is the only person, let me ask you a different way. Can only a 6'1" person align their arm with the taillight?
No, the arm is adjustable, so certainly people of different heights could also meet that alignment as well.
That's why they bend your arm with it, right?
Sustain.
How would you describe the ability of somebody 5'7", 6'3", being able to
Hold their arm
align
up
their
higher.
arm with the taillight?
Just changing the orientation and the
I love
posture.
this. I love this.
Was there any scientific significance, in your opinion, of this particular test?
Again, other than just demonstrating that it aligns with it, no, nothing beyond that.
He's just you can tell, and he what's great about Dr. Wolf here is he can portray his like utter disgust at the testing that Welcher did, but do it in such a nice way. Like you could tell he's just like, no, this has no scientific significance whatsoever. But he does it so nicely.
Next slide, please.
All right.
Dynamic test in which the vehicle is moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm, making contact with his hand, his forearm, and his elbow.
What is a dynamic test as it relates to a static test?
So that's when something's in motion, and in this instance, it's the Lexus moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm.
2 miles
Dr.
per
Welcher
hour.
explain what the purpose of this test was.
From what I recall, I think it was to demonstrate that when his arm makes contact with the taillight, he observed paint transfer in the general location that there were the abrasions or the lacerations on his arm.
Did he appear to paint the taillight?
He did, yes.
Do you see that
He did.
Dr. Welcher appears to be wearing an orange t-shirt? Yeah. What is he wearing?
It appears to be an orange t-shirt.
Is that similar to what was described as John O'Keefe having worn that night on January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Is there any significance to wearing that t-shirt?
Not that I can think of, no.
I love that he's getting these into getting in. Is there a significance for when? And my thought is, I wish he would have followed up and said, Dr. Wolf, have you ever dressed up like a victim of one of your crashes? And I wanted him to ask that, but I'm glad he gets these in.
Identify any shortcomings with this particular test?
Well, much like the static test, again, it leaves the door open to all those questions, right? About, again, doing this at 2 miles an hour doesn't tell you anything about, well, what happens at 10? What happens at 15? What happens at 20? Right? In terms of what are the collision forces? What's the damage? How does the arm move? What would the expected injuries be, right? This dynamic test, as well as the static test, doesn't answer any of those questions for us.
Just keep in mind, too, that there is another expert coming on tomorrow, Monday. Dr. Rentschler is up on Monday. Dr. Rentschler is the medical person. He's going to talk about the damage. He's going to talk about the injuries. This is a setup. This is a setup for Dr. Rentschler. This is a 1-2 punch. This is a combination.
Is this test from Dr.
And it's going to be glorious.
Welcher considered a force calculation?
I'm not aware of him making any type of force calculations or measuring accelerations or anything of that nature, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine whether the damage to Miss Reed's Lexus was consistent with the striking of an arm of a pedestrian?
I'm not aware of any impact testing that he did, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the damage to the taillight of Miss Reed's vehicle?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinions as it relates to the speed of the subject, Lexus, at the time of the alleged incident?
No, from reviewing his report and his PowerPoint and analysis, I could not find anywhere in it a specified speed or even a range of speeds.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion as it relates to the forces experienced by the taillight in such an impact?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion at all as it relates to the post-impact trajectory or movement, if you will, of John O'Keefe's mass or his body subsequent to the alleged conduct?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Next slide, please.
Not enough info, he said. We just don't have enough information to know any of that.
Photograph?
Yes.
What is this?
So this is something that you probably have heard and certainly I've discussed already, but this is looking at the right rear corner of the subject Lexus, specifically in the area of the damaged right taillight.
Did you consider this photograph in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
What, if anything, of significance did you note about this taillight?
We got a what if anything in the wild right there. A wild what if anything. Dun, dun, dun. All right.
Well, I'm going to jump to the next slide, if you will. So this is now the taillight obviously has been removed from the vehicle. So obviously what's important here is looking at what is the damage that we have to this taillight. What components were damaged in this alleged interaction. So we're looking at the clear diffuser at the bottom is fractured and missing. Same with the ones on the vertical side. The majority of the outer red lens is also missing and fractured. And then on the back side, we also have some damage in terms of some fracturing to that black plastic. And there's also a chunk of plastic missing on the top portion of the taillight as well.
So significant damage. What he's pointing out is the diffusers. Now we'll get to that in a second. So here we go.
If you could focus your attention on this area, describe for the jurors what they're looking at in terms of the diffuser. What is the diffuser?
Right. Let me see if this.
What is the diffuser?
Diffusers, right where my mouse is, there's a clear diffuser that runs along the bottom, and then there's another diffuser that runs along here, and then it also goes up vertically. Same here on the bottom one, that also goes up vertically. So this piece was missing and fractured on the bottom, along with the vertical portion. The chrome piece here you can see is also fractured and damaged, and then the kind of the second tier, if you will, that clear diffuser was also fractured and broken on the upper section as well.
Was that of significance to you in your review of the damage to the taillight?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because that tells me that we have to have enough force and energy to break, we talked about earlier, that 5 millimeter thick red outer lens. We have to have enough force to be able to get beyond that, to now start penetrating into the interior components of the taillight to get to, again, those clear diffusers and certainly cause damage to get induced out the back end of the taillight as well.
So this is why I cannot believe that this was caused by an accident. They are saying that you had to get through 5 millimeters of red plastic and the 3 millimeters, the diffusers, and break some of the plastic off and fracture the chrome that's inside there. And the only thing that you're going to have somebody's human arm was hit by a taillight hard enough to break all that stuff, the diffusers inside there, and only have superficial scratches, because that's what Brennan said they were, superficial. They're superficial scratches. There's no absolute way. It's just not possible.
Yes.
What is the tail light? What does the diffuser do? He brought it.
Thanks for nothing.
A two-part assembly. So what I did is I 3D printed a bracket so that I could mount the liftgate taillight assembly as well as the quarter panel.
All right, so guess what? We have that in court. And there we go.
Apologies.
Who's the other side of the witness stand?
Yes, Your Honor. So along the bottom is the
Now, he does get...
Diffuser that you've just been describing.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, in this area here, there's a diffuser that's running along the bottom.
So Miss Court Reporter is right there.
My apologies.
Who's the other side of the witness stand?
Yes, Your Honor. So along the bottom.
So he's got it right there. She's kind of like, oh, look, hey, wait, don't hit me.
Is the clear diffuser that runs along and then goes up vertically. And then on the second tier, there's also a clear diffuser that runs along here and then goes up vertically. And you might be able to see it through, it kind of looks like there's little dots on it. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of the diffuser that's underneath. And that, again, so you have that outer material that's 5 millimeters roughly in thickness. And then those diffusers are about 3 millimeters in thickness underneath this.
Could you make a determination, and you can go ahead and have a seat. Well, actually, you may not want to. Could you make a determination of the space, the gap between the outer plasticine area, the outer acrylic area, and the internal diffusers? You can just estimate that gap?
If I had to estimate, I'd probably estimate around an inch, maybe inch and a half.
Okay.
Okay, so that, they don't really get into it, but think about this. Think about this. And you'll see when they start doing the testing, how quickly, when the tail light hits the arm, supposedly, how quickly it moves, how quickly the arm accelerates, right? So the arm hits the tail light and accelerates away. It's not going to, you're not going to hold back 6,000 pounds with your arm. Maybe if you're the Hulk, that's the only one that's going to do it. The theory from the Commonwealth is that arm hit the taillight, broke the 5 millimeter, and 5 millimeters that is not thin. All right, so I'm gonna hold. Let's see. Let me do it this way. That is how thick, between my fingers right there, which you can't really see. Damn it! Between my fingers right there, that's like 5 millimeters. That's thick. That is a very thick piece of glass. They're saying that the car hit the arm. It went through 5 millimeters of glass, the inch to the diffusers, and then another 3 millimeters of diffusers, and broke the chrome before the arm got pushed the other way, out of the way. There's just, it's not physical. And there was no damage to the arm except for superficial scratches. It just doesn't make any sense.
You indicated that something was of significance to you in this photograph about the diffusers on the subject taillight, correct?
Correct.
Describe, now that you're holding that, what was it that was of note to you, Dr. Wolf?
So as I mentioned, we have damage not only to this outer thick portion, but it was enough force and energy to then penetrate deep enough to fracture the underlying diffusers that sit below this outer surface, and certainly enough force then to work its way back through inducement into the backside, and ultimately there was a top portion of the taillight that was also fractured up here.
Was all that significant to you in your review of the subject taillight material?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead and put that away.
All right, so that can't go back there because it's in evidence. So why don't we take it and...
I was just going to store it there until he's finished with his testimony, and then we can give it to the clerk magistrate. Okay. However you want to do it, Your Honor. I have no preference.
Is he using it still for his testimony?
Not right now.
All right, so, thanks, Jim.
All right.
Okay.
May I continue?
Yes.
Can we go to the next slide? What are we looking at here?
This is a collection of photographs that depict various fragments from the right rear tail lamp assembly of the Lexus.
Tail light fragments.
Which, as I discussed earlier, there's no glass in the taillight, so these did not or so, maybe a little less than that from the right
I'm
tail
gonna
light.
kind of skip through this here a little bit. Now we got the sweatshirt.
That Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing on the night of the alleged incident.
And what was the role that this played in your analysis ultimately?
Well, so one of the things that I noted, and I can go to the next slide, is there were a series of small punctures or holes in the sleeve, on the right sleeve of the sweatshirt in varying sizes. I think some as small as just a few millimeters. Again, I think there was maybe 10 or 12, I think I recall, on the right sleeve of that sweatshirt.
If we could go back to the larger photo, the previous slide, do you see the right sleeve denoted on the photograph to the right? Sort of air sleeve?
Correct.
Can you count those for us, please?
9 of them. There are 9.
In these photographs.
So this is,
some of the,
like I said, I think it was around 3 to 5 millimeters, maybe some of the smaller ones.
how big is 3 millimeters in inches?
It'd be probably around like an eighth of an inch or so.
Can we get word fundamentals?
So funny.
I want to discuss some very basic concepts that I hope kind of resonate as we go through the PowerPoint.
All right, so we're going to get into some math.
As I mentioned, physics and the physics. So this might be something you all remember back from high school physics, but even though it's been around since the late 1600s, we still use these laws today. So what we're looking at here is what I've done is just describe Newton's laws very simply. So and again, you might be familiar with these. So for instance, if we're talking about Newton's first law, an object at rest tends to stay at rest and at a constant speed unless it's acted on by an outside force, right? So if my arm is just here, right, it's just going to stay there until I give it a push or a pull, right? When I do that, that's going to induce an acceleration, right? So that's when we get into Newton's law, where if I apply a force to a mass, I'm going to cause it to change its speed. It's going to accelerate. And then Newton's third law, basically the law of reaction, indicates that when I push on my arm, there's also an equal and opposite force going back to my hand that I'm pushing with.
What role did these three very fundamental laws of physics play in your reconstruction or your conclusions following your?
Okay, bear with me real quick. I need to refresh. And of course, it went backwards. But we have a transcript now. Yay! I keep checking for a transcript. Okay.
Yes.
Did you rely?
Okay, so we were at Newton's law. That was there. There we go. Okay.
Reaction indicates that push on my arm, there's also an equal and opposite force going back to my hand. Thinking about the concept of an arm when it's impacted by a tail light that we did and conducted, we measured the acceleration of an arm when it's impacted by a tail light. If we know the mass of the arm and we've measured the acceleration, we can use Newton's second law, which is force is equal to mass times the acceleration, to calculate what that force is applied on the arm, which ultimately you will hear from my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, to talk about that.
Play in
impact speed in the speed and the force to look at what's the
Rentschler's going to tear this up tomorrow. He really is. Or Monday. I keep saying tomorrow. Tomorrow is not a trial day.
Damage.
Okay.
No.
Do it.
So don't be too afraid. This is some really simple equations that I want to show you. So that first one, delta V. So what do I mean by that? That simply just means you can think of delta, change in. So change in velocity. So if you look at that equation, the change in velocity, really simple. If I've got an object that's, let's say it's initially, for what V naught is, initially at 0 miles per hour, I hit it, and it's now moving 10 miles per hour. That means it underwent a change in speed of 10 miles an hour and is moving at that velocity. Acceleration is essentially how quickly did that velocity change occur, right? Did it go from 10 miles an hour in a split second, or did it go to 10 miles an hour over a few seconds?
This is not me.
Depending on the time,
not me right here.
How quickly that change in velocity occurred will determine what the acceleration is. And as I've already mentioned on the previous slide with Newton's second law, we can then take that information about acceleration and apply it to, if we have a known mass, to calculate what the force on that object is.
How did these math equations, delta V, acceleration, force, how did these play into, what role did they play in terms of the accident reconstruction here in this case?
Well, they're extremely fundamental, and I think as we go through the PowerPoint, you'll have an appreciation and understanding of what these concepts are. You'll see that I have plotted graphs with acceleration that shows the rate in that change in speed over time. You will see graphs of delta V, so the change in speed of the arm as it's being impacted by the taillight, and then ultimately we can calculate the force of that impact.
All right,
you say
we can forward a little bit.
Suggests or dictates that an object that is struck by another object with mass moves up to the same speed of the object that struck it. Describe that in...
Can you rephrase the question?
In colloquial terms. Evidence that is maybe at rest and struck moves to the same speed as the object that struck it. Okay. Can you describe
Right. So let's just give an example specific to this case. If the majority of the arm is struck by a 6,000-pound vehicle moving, let's say at 20 miles an hour, that arm will experience a change in speed. It will go from 0 up to about 20 miles per hour due to that impact. So that would be the change in speed. If my arm is at rest, stationary, is impacted by a 6,000-pound vehicle, it's going to change its speed up to roughly what that impact speed is.
And what about acceleration?
I mean, this is all the stuff that Welcher did. None of this. Welcher did none of these calculations. He didn't show any math. He just said, well, there was a shoe there and there were taillight pieces there. And, my arm lines up with the thing. He is coming back now. Bev is going to let Welcher come back. So I'm curious to see what the hell he does. Because I bet you it's not going to be very impressive. I'm not.
What are you describing, or what is math or physics describing in that equation in terms of the time it takes for that arm to now move from 0 to 20?
Right. So that's how quickly that change in speed is occurring. So to give you maybe an example you're
very
more familiar
important.
with, let's say.
Very important. That's what I'm talking about. The time it takes for that arm to speed up to whatever the speed is, if it's 20 miles an hour, if it's 24 miles an hour, whatever it is. It happens very, very, very quickly. So I don't see how there is enough time for an arm to be struck that's on a hinge. Your arm hinges. How does there enough time for that arm to be struck, reach its velocity, yet tear through the 5 millimeters, the gap of an inch, and the 3 millimeters, and then even more? It's just not something an arm is going to do.
You're driving down the road, you come up, you see a red light at the intersection, right? You're going to get on the brakes lightly, and your vehicle is going to change in speed, right? It's going to slowly decelerate. Let's say you're driving and a deer jumps out in front of you, you got to slam on the brakes, right? You're going to change your speed much quicker. So that's an example of two different rates that you're going to slam on the brakes, and your speed change is going to be it's going to happen
in milliseconds.
Yes, when we're talking about impact durations, especially of this nature, yes, they're not going to be, we're not talking about the impact occurring over a second, 2 seconds. That's extremely long. Even a duration of a couple hundred milliseconds in the context of this is considered long.
And then, of course, the force calculation looking at in terms of
is equal to mass, and then that top component, T1 minus T, all of these equations
and opinions and delta.
They are the core.
What does that mean?
So we're going to get a little more.
It's a process that scientists typically use to be able to reach the conclusions. And so you can think about it in this case, we make an observation, right? We have injuries to the arm. We've got a damaged taillight. So
yeah, Brennan, none of the for either trial have talked about the scientific method. They haven't find it. Alessi has asked about it multiple times. I think Jackson's asked about it once or twice. Nobody really gets into it, except now the defense actually defines the scientific
method.
Research
to figure out, okay, has anyone done testing with that, right? Has anyone hit an arm with the taillight to see what happens? See what
I'll
the
be right
forces
back.
are, right?
I gotta
And then
do
we start to make a
switch off
hypothesis,
the
right?
side.
So what happens, it's kind of an if-then statement. If the arm contacts the taillight, does the taillight break? Does it not break, right? What's the hypothesis there? And at least my understanding of reviewing Dr. Welcher's work, it appeared to be that his hypothesis...
Sustained. Next question.
Sure. Did you review, well, let me ask a different question. Going back to the calculations previously, the delta V, the acceleration, the force calculations that you described to the jury, did you see anywhere in any of Dr. Welcher's reports or his data that he undertook those core calculations?
No.
All right, sun is out. It is getting hot.
Did you see whether or not Dr. Welcher followed the scientific method as you're explaining it to the jury?
Sustained.
What did you note? Or what opinions or conclusions did you come to about the scientific method, if any, that Dr. Welcher did or did not undertake?
Sustained.
Can't even answer whether he thinks or not Welcher stuck with the scientific method. This is bullcrap.
Did you review Dr. Welcher's entire database? In other words, all the reports, all the raw data, and his PowerPoint?
Yes.
Did he undertake the scientific method as you know it?
Right, so that's sustained.
Continue to describe the scientific method as you know it and you employ it.
Certainly. So, again, from reviewing Dr. Welcher's report,
Sustained. Let me see what's sidebar.
See you at sidebar, guys, because you got to understand it's going to destroy the Commonwealth case if we point out that his white noise machine is loud. If we point out that this is junk science, guys, well, that would be very unfair to the Commonwealth, wouldn't it? If we point out that this is junk science, it's going to make that's allowed.
Stupid.
The only reason it would not be allowed. is if it had been kept out in the first place because Judge Bev had done her job as a gatekeeper.
Dr. Wolf, may I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, where are we on the chart? Let's describe, if you would, please, what role hypothesis plays in the general scientific method.
So generally, it's
fine.
So
The objection sustained.
Was your testing determining whether or not the scenario proposed in Dr. Welcher's report was consistent or inconsistent with what you would find, ultimately?
The objection sustained.
I think so. That one might have been a little leading. I think that was a little bit of a leading question. So give her that one.
Designed to determine whether the damage to Ms. Reed's vehicle or Lexus was consistent with the scenario that was proposed by Dr. Welcher?
That's sustained too. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
What was your testing? What were you engaged
Good grief.
in terms of your testing? What were you trying to find out?
Well, I think it was to, again, we talked earlier about the hypothesis, right? My understanding, Dr. Welcher indicated that the arm contacted the taillight, but there was no analysis or testing to determine what's the expected outcome of that. What's the damage to the taillight? What's next?
So you answered the first question. I'm striking that second part. Ask another question.
Was there anything else?
Good job, Alan.
I think simply put, it's to find out what happens when you impact an arm with a Lexus taillight at various speeds. What happens?
What was your understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained.
Did you have an understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained too.
It's not leading.
Ultimately, what were you trying to find out through your testing?
As I mentioned, I think it was determined when you impact a taillight at 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, what happens to the taillight? What's the expected damage? What happens to a sweatshirt when it makes contact with that? What happens to the fragments? How does the arm move? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the change in speed of the arm? And certainly, as I mentioned, my colleague Dr. Rentschler will discuss what are the expected injuries in that type of impact.
Did you see any of those questions answered in Dr. Welcher's report?
Ask it differently.
What did you see in terms of Dr. Welcher's report as it relates to those types of questions?
That's sustained.
That's the problem. She's being obnoxious today. She knows how damaging
Did
this
you want
is.
to take a methodology to perform the testing to answer
We will
questions
not
you
let
think
that in.
needed
It's
to be
so
answered from the jury?
stupid.
Yes.
Describe that, please.
So we started out, we kind of worked at this incrementally, right? We didn't start right off the bat with utilizing an exemplar Lexus going right into an ATD or a test dummy, right? We wanted to start in the laboratory.
We didn't just start out with a car out in the parking lot and some blue paint on my arm.
To have an understanding what happens at a range of speeds, in this instance, in our first two tests, between 10 and 17 miles per hour, right? What happens, what kind of damage do we observe, right? At 10 miles an hour, do we even break the light? At 17?
All right. So we'll fast forward a little bit.
So these were the initial two tests, miles an hour, what would happen to the taillight? To get an idea of starting to test this hypothesis. As I mentioned, we weren't sure at 10 miles an hour what would happen to the taillight. We wanted to see what would happen at 17 miles an hour with the arm. So again, it was to evaluate from a starting point what happens in this interaction based upon how Dr. Welcher had his arm oriented in his PowerPoint analysis.
Next slide, please. What is this?
So you're looking at a photograph of our lab setup. You can see on the left side of that is our Hybrid 3 anthropomorphic test device. To the right is a linear impactor, and this is something we already have in-house that we built years ago for our testing that we do for the National Hockey League when we're looking at what's the accelerations on an impact to a goalie wearing a helmet, right? We'd use this same device for that type of testing to measure head acceleration. So we applied this same linear impactor to be able to.
So they're hitting hockey helmets they're hitting hockey helmets with this, impactor to see how they hold up. Basically, that's crazy.
Project, if you will, or accelerate the taillight at a known speed into the ATD arm.
Okay, so we got.
So at the top here, there's a blue camera here. There's another blue camera here. So these are our high-speed cameras, and you'll see there's a bunch of lights around those high speeds. That's just because the frame rate's so high, and again, it's only sampling a very, very short amount of barometer-mounted cameras that we're documenting this overall.
Yep. You do need a lot of light to get that. Those high-speed cameras need a lot of light.
What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is looking at, and not to be confused, this wasn't the arm position when the impact occurred. This is just showing you the setup. So on the left is just kind of an overall shot, and then on the right here is a uniaxial accelerometer. So that's going to measure, we talked about that term earlier, right? The acceleration. So that's going to measure how quickly is this arm changing its speed, right? What's the acceleration of the arm as it's yes. The importance of this.
So let's check it out.
More specifically, looking
then
at
they get some hoodies.
Might be a little bit hard to see.
Now,
but we want.
What purpose did Welcher have to get the hoodies? These guys actually put the hoodie on the arm to find out what's going to happen with the glass, right? Welcher did none of that. He just dressed up in the hoodie to make it look like, okay, I dressed up in the hoodie. These guys actually did something with it. And then I saw somebody here. Let's see. Can I find it real quick or not? Yeah, I can't find it. Anyway, I'm not going to waste much time on those dorks. It was one of the dorky people. Oh, hey, woohoo, made it home. One of the dorky people saying, oh, they dressed up the dummy in the clothes. Well, they dressed up the dummy in the clothes because they had a reason to, because they wanted to test an actual bumper. Yeah, anyway.
Wanted to get the same exact sweatshirt or hoodie for the testing to evaluate if the taillight breaks, is there a mechanism for the fragments to penetrate and cause holes in the sweatshirt as were observed in Mr. John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Next slide. Were you successful in finding the exact replica sweatshirt?
Yes, and I will note, as I mentioned, I know it probably is hard to see, but the material blend on the sleeves are the exact same. They are 60% cotton and 40% polyester.
Was it important in your mind to maintain consistency with the data that you had received concerning John O'Keefe's clothing?
Certainly. I think we wanted to try to control as many variables as we could.
But you didn't get the right color.
To the next slide, please. Test A.
On Corral.
Describe Test A for us, please.
So you're going to see a series of photographs and then videos, but Test A was mounting a preconditioned
All right,
taillight
I unmuted
on
that time.
impactor to accelerate it
I,
to the Hybrid 3 arm. So again,
I put my my audio pad right in front of the picture here, so I remembered to unmute my mic when I was done crunkling the glass.
Evaluate damage to the taillight and
the bottle.
Accelerated to the arm.
Let's move to the next slide, please.
What a fun job.
What are we looking at in these photographs?
So you're looking on the left, a photograph just before
Yep.
the.
So because it was winter time and it was cold, all of the lights that they use and damage are kept in a freezer and cold.
The impact test was conducted. On the right, you're looking at a thermal image that is depicting the temperature profile.
All right, so
Look at
get
that
after
segment,
it
that lower
here.
portion here. Where how did you get preconditioned overnight in a freezer? Temperature was
Yep.
31. So we
All right,
the alleged
let's
incident.
get to it.
So this is you were looking at the video. Do you want me to go ahead and play the video?
Tell us what we're about
to set up. If you look at the top portion of this video, you will see the taillight. Part of it's covered by the high-speed camera. But what will happen is the linear impactor will fire, and the taillight will be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour, striking the clothes.
Yeah, I mean, that is like you got this reflector right here to get all this light up on. Look how lighted that is. This is a normal camera looking down on this, right? It's not one of the high-speed cameras. In order that it requires so much light to get the pictures that it needs because it's going so fast, and stuff has to be like incredibly lit up. So
Okay. Let's go to the video.
oh bam,
like a
that's
busted elbow.
10 mile an hour test.
What is this?
So this is also when the video plays, you will see the taillight enter from the left and contact the arm. And I will note that this is essentially slow mode, so it's not happening in real time. So you'll see the taillight slowly moving, but it's actually in reality moving at 10 miles per hour.
Understood. Go ahead and play that.
So you can see in these dark spots on the taillight, it's still not picking that up very well. It picked up what it needed to pick up, right? But it requires so much light to get right.
Question, now that that's played, how did you mount the taillight to the accelerator, the linear accelerator?
Right. It's not some nice clean surface that we can just bolt on. So what we had to do is 3D be able to marry those two together so that we can bolt onto the linear impactor. And we used a polyurethane expanding foam to be able to marry those two together so that we could then bolt it onto the linear impactor to use it for this test.
Did you
flakes you can see of that polyurethane foam off the back?
So in terms of the damage to the taillight?
It was very minimal.
We go to the next.
All right, minimal at 10 miles an hour.
From the side, and similarly, you'll see the taillight come from the left and impact
watch
the arm.
this.
Look at that wrist.
In terms of.
You don't think that's going to do damage to your arm? That's even 10 miles an hour is going to do damage to your arm.
Of the arm, the test arm?
Well, the arm essentially, and we'll see this in the data later, it reaches a common velocity with the taillight. Based upon the portion of the arm that was contacted, again, consistent with how Dr. Welcher has it oriented, it will become accelerated up to 10 miles an hour roughly.
Over approximately what period of time is that arm accelerated up to 10 miles an hour along with the taillight?
We'll see it on the data plots. I think it's about 10 milliseconds or so off top.
Let's go.
Slide, basically showing just at contact, just after contact, and then post contact. Test. I will note that there was a couple small fragments towards the left here. There was a couple fragments missing, and then there was some small fracturing here in that area.
How would you describe?
So this was the totality.
Please.
Taillight, so that you can have a side-by-side comparison of the test taillight compared
with striking an arm at 10 miles an hour.
It's inconsistent in my opinion.
Next slide, please.
Inconsistent at 10 miles.
This is still test A, is that correct?
Correct.
Were you able to reach any opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
As well as the former opinion that you...
So this is, yes.
All right, so
Next slide, please.
this is a very interesting slide. This is how long everything takes.
So this is a graph that shows roughly, on the next graph, you're going to see it.
1 second is this entire graph. This graphs 1 second of time, just one. From here to here is 1 second. This is the space within that second that everything occurred.
A 24 millisecond window. So what I want to show you on this graph is what does that look like over a full second, so you can have an appreciation of just how quickly this is occurring. As you mentioned earlier, I think your comment about a blink of an eye, this is even shorter than that. We're looking at, as you'll see on the next graph, again, it spans over just a few milliseconds. So that yellow tick that you see in the middle there, what I've done is I've plotted that over a full second. So 1 second is equal to 1,000 milliseconds. So if we go 500 milliseconds to the right, 500 milliseconds to the left, this whole graph represents 1 second in time. This impact duration is occurring very quickly.
1 second, is that reflected from the beginning of the graph to the end of the graph? That's representative of 1 second, is that right?
Correct. So starting at this y-axis all the way to here is 1 second in time, with our impact duration happening over just a few milliseconds.
That's so
and this
crazy.
Is 2 miles an hour?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So we're looking at the acceleration or the change in speed over time, that parameter that we discussed earlier. So what you can see is that as the arm is impacted, we had the accelerometer mounted on the inside portion of the forearm, if you will. You see that it starts to accelerate, right? Because it's changing its speed, and then it starts to level off after the impact has subsided, basically, and it's reached a common velocity.
What do we see in terms of the G-forces that are the arm is subject to?
So the peak is occurring right around here at about, looks like just over 6 milliseconds, and the peak acceleration is just over 130 Gs.
And what does that mean? What is a G?
So a G is acceleration due to gravity. So if we're being held down by 1 G, so you can think of it as basically a multiplication factor that is 131 times the acceleration due to gravity.
And the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is, again, that concept that we talked about earlier, delta V. This is the change in speed. So if we do some math to the previous data that we collected, it's a technique called integration, where we can actually add up all of that acceleration to determine what speed did the arm get up to. And when we do that calculation to this data, what we see is that initially at the impact, right, the arm's at rest, right, Newton's law, first law. And then we impart a force on it in terms of the tail light impacting it. It's going to cause the arm to accelerate and change its speed. So as I noted earlier, it's essentially going to reach a common velocity with the impact force based upon how Dr. Welcher has the arm oriented. And we can see that it's a tick over 10 miles per hour at just over 10 milliseconds. So that means that the arm in a 10 millisecond period is going from 0 up to about 10 miles per hour, which was the speed of the impact.
Just how fast this is actually happening is just insane.
The force of gravity is exerted on the arm at the same time.
Sustain us to that point.
Where does gravity play into this? What is the 131 Gs? Where's that force exerted?
So that is the acceleration that the arm experienced as a result of that impact. So that's how quickly it was changing in speed.
Understood. Let's go to the next slide.
So is this a good place to take the morning recess? All right, folks, we'll take a recess.
All right. Morning recess. We'll get back to it.
All right, so
Okay, you all set, Dr. Will?
B, I failed to ask you, were you compensated or was ARCCA paid following the proceeding last year for any of the time?
Yes, last year.
Last year?
Correct, yes.
Do you know how much that was?
From what I recall, I think it was around $20,000.
Was ARCCA paid by the defense, your initial testing, the initial analysis we talked about earlier this morning, was ARCCA paid by the defense for any of that?
No, not the report, testing, none of that.
Okay. What were you paid for last year related to the first proceeding?
My time to appear at the proceeding.
Travel?
Correct, travel, testimony. Yes, sir.
So the form, Mr. Jackson?
Sure. undertaking that you're testifying about today?
Yes.
About how much have you been paid?
I think when I spoke to accounting, I think they indicated it was around $50,000.
Okay.
Wow.
Let's talk about laboratory test B.
Welcher and them were paid like Aperture was paid like $400,000 or $425,000. Oh yeah, I saw that. I haven't watched his stream yet. He had, I guess I'm gonna have to watch that this weekend. But he was in the court. He had some observations. So.
Compare that to 350,000.
All right, so now we got test 2. This is 17 miles per hour.
Because is this similar to the 10-mile-an-hour test, just with increased velocity?
Correct.
Okay. What about the purple hued taillight on the right? What is that?
So let's get.
Can you describe the decoupling?
All right.
Hour. At a top.
Go ahead and play it. Can you describe the
So
decoupling?
more significant
You can
damage.
see where the two are basically married together, right? It's kind of actually coming back together now. So that bond that we had, right? This is the most effective way that we could mount it to the impactor. It just became detached due to the force of that.
That
impact
is
stopping at the end
like-
of the stroke.
Understood.
Yeah, no, I am too.
What are we looking at?
Here we are from the
So
front.
this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just
What?
a side view. Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct? Not real time.
Okay. What do you note in terms of the deflection on the arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving now at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you
It's that's gonna hurt. You get your arm hit like that. That's going to do some damage.
damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10-mile-an-hour test, which, again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video just showing right at contact, during contact, and post-contact. The
All right,
damage
so-
to the taillight at the conclusion of the test.
17 miles an hour. This is the damage to an arm. What we don't have is damage to the diffuser.
Where, again, it's missing fragments of the outer red lens. I will note that the interior diffusers and plastic components are intact in this test.
When you say intact, what do you mean?
They're not damaged or broken.
Not damaged at all.
Next slide, please.
There's not enough time. There's not enough time for an arm to do that much damage. There's not.
What is that picture of?
It's just not.
Another photograph showing the taillight post-test. Again, no damage to the underlying diffusers in terms of being cracked, shattered, or broken.
And what did you note in terms of the damage to the outer acrylic, the red piece?
It broke into a few fragments, and I think on the next slide I depict those in a photograph.
Let's take a look at the
Right,
damage to the
so-
subject taillight on the right is consistent.
Conclusion?
Conclusions or opinions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight on the right is consistent with striking an arm at 17 miles per hour.
It's inconsistent from a damage perspective.
What's the basis of that opinion?
The test that I just showed you all.
Was that testing that we just talked about conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies that you've earlier described?
Yes.
Is the
Yes.
damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 17 miles per hour?
No.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Slide 45, please. What is this?
You're looking at photographs post-test of the sweatshirt that the ATD was wearing at the time of the impact.
Oh, the sweatshirt. Hmm.
Did you note any defects in the fabric of the right arm?
There were no punctures, holes, or fraying of the material during this impact test.
Based on this testing that you conducted in this case, is the damage that you saw of the shirt that John O'Keefe was wearing consistent or inconsistent with the shirt that's on the ATD?
It was inconsistent compared to the sweatshirt that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Based on that, do you have an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not the damage on Mr. O'Keefe's clothing was consistent with being struck by the right rear taillight at 17 miles per hour?
It is inconsistent.
Next slide.
All right, let's go outside.
Can we approach because
Here we
we
go.
should be able to talk about Welcher.
All right, let's see.
Of Dr. Welcher, does this configuration align with your understanding of Dr. Welcher's alignment of the arm as it relates to the vehicle? Okay.
Existing.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Fence? Do we not get to put on a fence? We just have to
Whoa.
take Commonwealth's expert at face value. It's not totally in the
Big dog, that's tiny.
seemingly.
Okay.
Installed reconditioned taillights.
What are we looking at in these two photographs?
So on the left is a photograph of the installed reconditioned taillights just after the install, and on the right is a
They're still
thermal image
keeping them
of that.
cold. They're still keeping the taillights cold.
If I may just point out with the temperature. So one of the things you
So let's take a look at this test. So we got an arm suspended.
or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead.
We have an arm suspended from a forklift.
Did
you can see that
It's quick.
Right.
This
What
is
did
the
you
force
do when
on
you
that
said more of a
shoulder, for
side
sure.
swipe or a click?
So I think the next couple of videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? I'm sorry, this photograph.
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left.
there we go. 15 miles per hour. I don't see.
You didn't quite even get the
So
this video, what you meant
elbow.
by
if we're told that this was a side swipe or a clip, that's exactly what happened just there. It was side swiped. I can't say side swipe now without trying to emulate Brennan. Side swipe.
side swipe or a click.
Right, so this is where the hand and the wrist are in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with, I'm sorry, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand
Can we move to the next slide?
with the high-speed cameras in slow motion.
And this is at 15 miles per hour, correct?
15 miles an hour, correct.
Can you explain for the jurors, given the fact that this is suspended, does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an ATD?
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it.
Can you go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these three photographs?
So you're looking at, on the left, starting from left to right, just at contact, and then
Almost
just
exactly
after
what
contact,
Walter
and then
denoted.
post-contact. So as I mentioned, you can see that in this first one at contact, again, we don't have, the hand isn't, and the arm aren't positioned as far out on the previous test, and the hand is in the area and the wrist of the lift gate taillight with part of the forearm in contact with the quarter panel taillight. And as you saw in the video, essentially the arm just kind of moves out of the way of the vehicle as it comes by.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the test vehicle subsequent to the test, depicting the,
All right,
I'll say, damage to the taillights.
Describe what you did see in terms of damage or lack of damage on the taillight.
There was no damage or fracturing to the taillights.
Describe the orientation of the arm in this particular test that you said was more of a side swipe. What was the orientation of the arm to the taillight in terms of how much of the arm touched the taillight? It's probably a clunky question, but I think you understand it.
I don't know if I could break it down into, I think just qualitatively speaking, like I say.
All right, so that was the.
So there's some rotation.
You see this a little. It happens a little. You got a little more time. I think. Hang on. Come on, go back. Go back. Go back. Go back. Go back. Come on. Come on. Oh, I screwed it up.
Well as the forearm, so we were able to
There we
measure
go.
the acceleration of both the hand and the forearm in these tests.
Oh, a second. Still is like 4 or 5 milliseconds.
So this is the.
All right, so now we get to the 29 vehicle test. Give me like a couple of minutes. I gotta call in my dinner order, and then I will be right back. So, hold on a second. I'm just gonna let this play. I'm gonna mute
My
myself.
colleague again compressing the taillight while we
Put my
install the lift gate taillight.
audio
to try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right
thing
is
up here in front of me,
thermal
so I
image of the
know I'm
taillight after the
muted.
install. So the
And I'll be
average
right back.
temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is a drone video showing a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse
29.
into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift.
Okay, if we can watch this video, please.
Can't even hardly keep it straight. Poor guy walking his dog back there behind all this.
Your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm, so you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry.
Whoa.
Sorry. I didn't.
Here's the
What are
arm
the purple
up.
and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Is there a reason you believe physically that that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
I think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted, just before we get to the other testing, the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines?
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay.
Oof. There's our pirouettes. Look at how high that flew.
And what is this?
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll
All right,
see
check
the
this.
Lexus
I mean, are you
entering
guys? Wow, this is crazy.
Okay.
Bam, that like nails that.
Was this striking?
You can see how much freaking damage that thing is going to do.
Yes, this was a more central impact to the arm, yes.
How? I mean, it's not.
And what is this?
So this is a high-speed or slow-motion video depicting the test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it breaks the tail light, but
Yeah, the arm is hanging the wrong way for one thing.
I mean, yeah, I know it's on a string, but you're still. It's not.
Next slide.
There's no way that those pieces are going to get into your coat or into your hoodie and cut your arm up.
First contact with the majority of the hand, well, the hand, the majority
What's
of the
hilarious is
forearm in
Brennan
contact with the liftgate taillight,
is
with a
he
portion of the
cast
elbow in contact with the
doubt
quarter
on his
panel
own
taillight.
thing here a little bit.
Far left frame. Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the tail light?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15, yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car? Okay.
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes. Sustained. Can I ask you differently?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29 mile an hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please. What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5mm red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please.
Diffusers are
What are we
fine.
looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
So even at 29 miles an hour, not enough to break the diffuser.
And this is 29 miles
This
an
is
hour.
showing the results of the 29 mile per hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolf?
The results of this test.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained. Mr. Daphne.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please.
He's got to ask every time he says John O'Keefe, and then it gets sustained. His objection sustained, and then he asks, "Well, how about any arm?" And that's okay. It's so stupid.
What is depicted in this graph?
All right.
So this is looking at the acceleration of the hand in the 29 mile per hour impact test with
Long this
accelerations
one
close
take?
to 800 Gs at 2 milliseconds.
800 G's. Jeez. Jeez.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
This is the acceleration of the arm, reaching peak acceleration of about 500 Gs.
You indicated 800 Gs in the last graph. What's the difference? What's the difference in the delta between the 500 and 800?
Between the hand and the arm?
Understood. Which one suffered was subject to 800 Gs?
That would be the hand.
And which one was subject to the 500 Gs?
That would be the arm.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed. So what speed did the hand get up to as a result of the impact? So we can see that in about 3 milliseconds, the arm is moving nearly at almost 25 miles per hour. And then a little bit later, again, this is still very quick in time, at about 14 milliseconds, it's at about 30 miles per hour.
30. Wow. It's kicking. That was
accelerates up to, by 8 milliseconds, we're at about 35 miles per hour. And this, you may be wondering why we're getting more speed than what the input was. And that's because you get a phenomenon known as restitution. Basically, there's some pound.
All right, so that was.
Miles an hour is
now we have the 24 mile an hour arm attached to a dummy. This is the arm. It's got an accelerometer on it. I guess this arm is like a $100,000 arm or something.
So it's my understanding that this is the upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2, and I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the end point, if you will, in that data set.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a thermal image of the taillights just after the install with the average temperature at about just over 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide. And what are we looking at?
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please. Next slide. What are we looking at?
What he doesn't do is get knocked.
So this is
a
a
whole bunch of feet off
top-down video from the top of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended, attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into going to the top of the screen.
Spun him. Of course, I guess the dummy is also.
All right, so an ATD is an anthropomorphic test device. ARM is a component of a crash test dummy using crash reconstruction. So it analyzes injury mechanisms. Oh, really? Really? It can analyze injuries? No way. Evaluate safety systems and collect data. So there you go. That's what it is.
So
next slide. What is this view?
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video.
24 mile an hour.
In reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build up before it starts here.
Bam. Guy spins around. Now he does spin. He doesn't get pirouette. But the legs are all twisted up.
How might your ankle break with your weight
So this is a
loading your
perspective
ankle
from the
like
high-speed
that?
camera, so a slow motion video
And then you
with
take
the
the twist?
Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolf, I failed to ask this. It may be obvious. After each of the tests, C, D, E, F, were you replacing the taillight with new?
Yes,
replacing
the taillight.
Damage. We still.
What happens here? All right, so 24 mile an hour impact. This is like what they're saying, you know, and they don't. Yeah, anyway, stupid. It's the 24 mile an hour test.
Look at that. Look at his whole hip has been like completely dislocated.
It just nice still.
Wow.
If you look at pieces, I mean, look how quick his arm is out of there. That's the thing, your arm.
Next slide.
Milliseconds.
In this configuration, was the ATD outfitted with the hoodie that you've earlier described?
Yes.
At the time you outfitted the ATD with the hoodie in this configuration before this test E, did you confirm that the right sleeve was damaged or undamaged?
After this test?
No, before.
Before? It was undamaged before the test.
Okay. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is still frames from the high speed. So starting out on the left here, joystick, and the elbow on the right is post contact. So this is a overall photograph depicting the taillights subsequent to this test at 24 miles per hour. I will note that there's no damage to the liftgate taillight, and then there is damage to the quarter panel taillight.
Is there any damage to the internal diffusers on this taillight?
So if I go to the next photograph, if I may.
Please.
So you can see here, there is this kind of thicker, it's actually not crack. So I'm looking at the clear diffuser here with the dots that you see. This line that you see, kind of opaque. I don't know if you've got a laser pointer.
Yes.
Just so there's no confusion, thank you. So the line right here that's part of the assembly. So that's just a part of how the plastic is molded. There's a very small crack right here in the underlying diffuser, but all of the remaining part of the diffuser in terms of this portion here and here are all intact, and same with this portion of it.
What about the chrome piece that's running between the diffusers?
I don't believe that was damaged during this test, no.
And what about the clear acrylic toward the top left of that taillight housing?
It was partially fractured, but not the entire.
What is this depicting?
So this is a photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight subsequent to the 24-mile-an-hour impact test with the ATD arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Based on this test, were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 24 miles an hour?
Sustained in that form.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 24 miles per hour?
An arm. Any arm.
The test results, it's
doesn't matter.
Striking an arm.
Why do you?
Got an arm.
On what do you base that opinion?
I base it upon the test results that I've shown in terms of the video and the data acquisition.
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail?
So during this test, we had the instrumented hybrid arm outstretched from the test dummy with the accelerometer on the hand and the forearm. We had data acquisition on the vehicle, monitoring the speeds of the vehicle. We accelerated that vehicle into the arm at 24 miles an hour to conduct a dynamic impact test to collect data certainly about the acceleration that the arm experienced, but then also make observations about the damage that we observed to the taillight.
Do you hold that opinion that we've just discussed to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
And were your tests conducted in accordance with methodologies that are generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction in this particular test cycle?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photos?
So these are photographs depicting, excuse me, the test clothing. Again, prior to the test, there were no holes or damage to the sweatshirt. That was the same post-test. We did not see make any observations with respect to any fraying, holes, punctures to the material of the sleeve.
Was there any damage whatsoever observed on the right sleeve of that ATD?
No.
Next slide, please.
All right, here we go.
This graph.
Okay,
so for 10 milliseconds.
It still happens very, very quickly.
Keys of about 300 at 4 milliseconds. This is showing the change in speed of as a result of the impact, ultimately getting up to approximately 24 miles an hour, which again is the impact velocity of the Lexus.
And how fast did it get up to 24 miles an hour?
In probably about 10 milliseconds or less.
Next slide, please.
Arm. Total window of time of about.
All right, so this is the full. They decided to do a full impact test with a crash test dummy they call, or a Rescue Randy. So Rescue Randy has come up quite a bit today.
It was oriented in test E, is that echo, where it was standing at all off to the side?
No.
It was projected rearward. Reflected of a direct impact on the arm itself.
We have a 29 mile per hour direct impact test.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Did you undertake to test a direct impact on the body of the ATD in this test?
Of the Rescue Randy dummy?
Yes.
Yes.
The Rescue Randy dummy.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the intended impact configuration with the Rescue Randy suspended here by the forklift, and again, kind of in the path of the profile at that right rear corner.
How much does this test dummy weigh?
Approximately 200 pounds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a video. We had a little bit of a full overall video.
High-speed video.
Wait,
weren't triggered, but
we
were able to pull our. So this is a video. We had a little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video of the test taking place.
Do you have, or let me ask you, did you intend to have high-speed video just like you've had in every other test?
Yes.
What went wrong? Something
just miscommunication between the driver and the rest of the test engineers.
Gotcha.
Full start.
Okay. Was the taillight housing reassembled for this test?
Yes, it had a preconditioned new set of
that in your test was received by you?
Yeah.
The right, the left.
Boom! Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Can you play that one more time, please?
That was the full impact test. Now nobody's
in this series of photographs.
So this is another. We'll move.
all right. So
He's capturing the thermal images now in place.
this is full impact
20 miles an hour
damage.
with a direct impact.
So look what they did to that car, though. This is a car that they bought in order to do this testing. And remember, the other one that Welcher bought, they were going to sell it and, hope to get the same value out of it or sell it for more, that they were in California. These guys are just like, hell no, we're going to wreck it. We are wrecking that car. You can't tell us not to. We're wrecking it. And they did.
The exemplar taillight.
And so this is an example of the scientific method, right? You talked about the scientific method. This is the scientific method. You try everything, even the things that you supposedly aren't happening. You get a full impact test.
Exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight.
So it's blown up. All right, so
Agency, those law enforcement,
Go to
RTM,
lunch.
BPD, or MSP, and the agency.
come back for a little bit, and I think he's done. Actually,
Okay, great. Thank you.
Grace,
Jurors, we are going to start.
what you did and why you did it, and how you drew the conclusions that you drew. It was an extremely good
Right, so let's
presentation, I thought.
go back to right at the end.
Test that you just saw with a center of mass. Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the
Justice for Randy, I know.
Was involved in a center of mass strike of a pedestrian at a high speed rearward maneuver.
Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
What do you base that opinion on?
The testing that we conducted in that last test that you just saw.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Dr. Wolf?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Is this a good place for a break, or do you want to get started?
Lunch. All right. And then Cross. And Brennan is back. Mr. Brennan is back to his old ways. He just can't help himself. And I hope the jury hates him as much as I do and you do. I really hope that I really hope that this just doesn't go over well with them. I don't see how it could, but I've been surprised before. So, okay, let's get kicking it.
Jurors, why don't we let you have your lunch? Okay. So,
All right, so we're going to have lunch first. All right, let me go. Here we go.
all right. Thank you.
When you testified in direct, you shared with the jury some of the work that ARCCA does. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you had mentioned a couple interesting things.
Yeah, I know you are, yeah, you're not going to like this. This is not good at all. There is nothing really good about this. There is something coming up when they get into the science thing. I've got a theory. I think they're setting him up. It could be and there's DUI guy right there. DUI guy right there. That is DUI guy. Holy shit. That's fucking DUI guy. I thought that was for like the interns and stuff. Yep, that's DUI guy. Okay. So, I know. He's an just wait. There's one part you're going to be mad. Oh my God, you're going to be mad. All right, let's get it. All right, I'll be right back.
Yes.
The work with the Department of Defense, was that during your time or before you got there?
That would have been prior to my employment, yes.
So when you were telling them about work with the Department of Defense, that really had nothing to do with you. That was ARCCA before you began working there.
ARCCA as a whole, yes, the work that we do, yes.
Not you.
As I said, I wasn't involved specifically in that project, no.
And you mentioned that you did some stuff for, company does some things for the NHL?
Yes.
You didn't tell us much more about what you do. There's other things that ARCCA does as far as clients, right?
Certainly.
Did you share with us that you work for lawyers and law firms?
Yes, we do.
And you do litigation, insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason why you highlighted the Department of Defense that you don't do and the NHL but didn't share the rest of the stuff with us?
That's just some of the prominent clients that we have.
I see.
I see.
You provided us a CV, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's like a resume, tell us a little bit about your education experience. You get to highlight some of the things, your accomplishments.
Yes.
You shared with us you've been the director of accident reconstruction at this company, ARCCA, since 2017.
No, not since I started.
You started with ARCCA in 2017.
Correct, yes.
When did you become the director of accident reconstruction?
I think that would have been in January of 2024, so about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago?
Yes.
And you received your certification from ACDAR?
Yes.
Did you pass the test on both parts the first time?
I don't recall if it, I think it was I had to retake, I think, the practical section in the afternoon.
Well, you would recall something like that, wouldn't you? Did you pass both parts on the first try?
Like I said, I think it was the second part I had to retake.
Well, this is a pretty important test, isn't it?
Not really.
It's your certification.
It is, but much of the concepts that are covered in it are very elementary.
Well, not so elementary. You had a hard time with part of it, didn't you?
Well, with respect to the portion that I had to retake, it's a practical exam where you have to reconstruct an accident. You have to determine approach angles, departure angles, and it can be very sensitive to those inputs. And unfortunately, if you mess up one of your first angles and you carry out that calculation, then the whole problem is graded wrong, even if you did all the math correct.
So we understand there's a multiple choice question part. That's the easier part, correct?
I don't know if it's easier, but there is a multiple choice part.
There's a more practical part where you actually have to go out in the field and do assessments, kind of like the things that you did today.
You don't go out into the field, no.
And, when did you first take that second part that you did that?
I don't recall.
You don't remember when you took the test?
No, I don't.
Suffice to say, you took it again.
God, man, he's such a jerk.
And
Like, he just,
passed both sections of that test?
Yes.
he's so fucking condescending. Just the condescension. This guy has been just, oh, just wait.
You list your schooling, and you list your degrees, don't you?
Yes.
You actually obtain those degrees, right?
You mentioned some of the things that you focused on in your academic experience, don't you?
Yes.
And you have publications.
Correct.
Recently, you did a publication regarding vehicle control history on Toyotas.
Correct.
Vehicle control history is data that is stored in a vehicle?
Yes.
And Toyota owns Lexus, correct?
Correct.
So you have familiarity with vehicle control history. In fact, you have a publication on it.
Yes.
In your entire resume, you only mention pedestrian collisions or that you're involved in pedestrian-type events 3 times. Is there anything specific in your
Only
resume
3
or
times?
publications that show a published accomplishment, for example, in pedestrian collisions? Do you have any
TV, 3
publications
times
that
seems like a lot.
have been peer-reviewed
What?
or published in that area?
No, I don't have any publications in pedestrians.
You write or you note areas of specialty, and you list a bunch: accident reconstruction, human factors, EDR, commercial vehicle HVEDR, pedestrian bicycle accidents, nighttime visibility, and a number of others, correct?
Correct.
Is there anywhere in your resume that notes particular classes that you've attended?
But the state troopers, they do a 40-hour crash reconstruction test.
And completed regarding pedestrian collisions?
No, I haven't taken any classes in that.
You haven't taken any classes on pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever taught regarding pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever been a speaker in a presentation about pedestrian collisions?
Yes.
Okay. Is that listed in your resume?
I don't list lectures or presentations, no.
I mean, just...
You were asked questions about your involvement in this case. Yes?
Yes.
And you had shared with us that you, at the beginning, were working for a separate party or a third party, you said?
Yes, another agency.
Another agency. And at some point, you came to court and testified last year.
Yes.
And during the time, before you came in and testified, you weren't wholly independent of the defense, were you?
Well, now we're going to get into
testing at the point of
now we get into the communications and the Signal app and all
As I
that.
mentioned on direct, I didn't know the Commonwealth or the defense in this case.
My question, more precisely, before you testified, before you came into court and gave your testimony, you weren't totally independent from the defense, were you?
No, I mean, I had to communicate with them to be able to determine when to appear for testimony.
So you were communicating with them, yes?
Yes.
And in fact, some of the time that you spent, ARCCA actually billed the defense for, and they paid that bill, didn't they?
Eventually after the trial, yes.
During that time, you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
Do you think that you're under a sequestration order today?
Yes.
Did you talk to anybody about any of the prior testimony in this case before today?
No.
How'd you get here today?
How did I get here today? I took a car ride over from the hotel.
Who drove you?
It was a driver. I don't know his name.
Why is it dick?
It would have been someone on the defense team.
Was it like a window, like a limo?
It was an SUV.
Was there anybody from the defense with you on the ride home?
There were 3 young ladies in the back seat. I think they might have been interns and Mr. Woke.
I bet you they were giggling.
Mr. Wolf. I think it's pronounced. Am I saying it wrong?
He's also Mr. Wolf.
Have you discussed anything about this case before your testimony today as far as the trial?
Before today? Yes.
Have you discussed anybody's testimony in this case?
Nobody's testimony, no.
That was different last year, though, because before you testified last year, you did have discussions about testimony, didn't you?
Not with the Commonwealth or the defense, no.
But I'm asking, though, you did have discussions about testimony before you testified last year, right?
Correct, yes.
And you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
Do you think the jury fucking cares? Nobody cares, Brennan.
After you testified last year, the court ordered you to provide all of your text messages, all your communications
Lord, here we go.
with the defense, didn't they?
Yes.
Did you provide those communications?
Yes, all of the records that I had at the time I provided. My possession, sir.
A text message isn't just a time and date. It's actually the defense.
From what I recall, I think it was around 50 texts that I sent.
It wasn't 100, I think it was 50.
Well, I think it was around 100 total in terms of back and forth, but it was, I think, 50 that I sent.
And during those texts, communications, conversations, correct?
About logistics, yes.
Did you provide the content of those text messages when you were ordered to by the court?
Well, those text messages spanned from, I guess it would have been April or so of 2020.
How many of those text messages?
So it was a year after the fact, and I had already deleted the text at that point.
How many of those text messages did you delete?
I just swiped the conversation. So
Oh, yeah, I know exactly.
How many of those 100 or so text messages did you delete, sir?
It would have been the whole text chain. I didn't individually delete them. It just, when you swipe, it just deletes the text chain.
After you deleted them, did you go into the deleted and then delete them so they were unavailable?
I don't recall doing that.
You were asked to search your records for text messages. Did you do a thorough search to see if you still had them or whether you had destroyed them all?
I checked my phone, and I also checked with my phone carrier.
So do you know if they were still under the recently deleted part of your phone, or did you go take that extra step and totally destroy them?
From what I recall, I did not find any of the text messages, no.
This is a class in cool. Brendan is just, he's being a jerk, and Wolf is so cool. He never changes his pitch. He never gets frustrated. Not once. Not one time does he get frustrated. It's so insane.
Is there any reason why you deleted all of your text?
Clients all the time. Things. It's just.
All right, so
there was no
just deletes text messages. Now they're going to talk about Signal.
Ultimately asked.
All right.
Do you have any records from your Signal use?
I do not know. I don't know. I think it was default.
Communications pursuant to that court order?
Oh no, they use Signal.
The first time.
Have you used it since with other clients?
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
Have you used Signal with other clients? Not yet, but I probably will. What I don't understand is not those text messages from the last trial weren't even part of the order. That's the thing yeah, you don't have to share text messages with your experts. You don't have to.
Before you testified,
it's so insane.
Last time, at the last proceeding. Or should I say, when you testified at the last proceeding, kind of like today, you attempted to portray yourself as totally independent, didn't you?
Sustain enough.
When you testified, questions that you thought could help, that you should be asked when you testify,
Oh,
correct?
and if you remember the Wadier, he yelled at him for sending in that page that said, "Hey, ask these questions. Here's what I'll answer."
What I routinely do before testifying is prepare an outline of topics and questions that would best help be able to get out my opinions and analysis I undertook, ultimately so that you all have an understanding of what I did.
So I'm asking you a question. You gave the explanation, but you're skipping over the answer to my question. So I'll ask you again.
That would best help be able to get out my opinions and
Listen
analysis
to
I
this
undertook, ultimately so that you all
dickhead.
have an understanding of what I did.
So I'm asking you a question. You gave the explanation, but you're skipping over the answer to my question. So I'll ask you again. Before you
even care.
testified, did you write out a list of questions
He's gonna do what he wants.
that you wanted to be asked?
Yes.
And when you listed out the questions, you also listed out the answers, didn't you?
A general response. It wouldn't be verbatim to that.
I didn't say verbatim, but you listed out the answers to each and every one of the questions that you had prepared.
Yes.
So for every question, there's an answer that you provided so that you could
Oh,
follow
cool.
the script, so to speak.
Still cool as a
I
cucumber.
wouldn't characterize it as a script.
One of the questions asks, so not being able to put this somewhere in direct examination, respect the vehicles, I had enough information from the material I reviewed, so it wasn't necessary. Need,
Response would be the same. It wouldn't change depending on who called me to testify. There
Oh
are a number
yeah,
of
this
cases.
is like
venue cases frequently involve pedestrians. Remember that?
Yes.
And you said, yes, unfortunately, there is a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian fatalities. Is that
Just
true?
like you said here.
Correct. Yes.
And they happen more often in the day or at night.
More often at night. Yes.
Statistically speaking,
oh, I know. He swore this is
Correct.
statistically speaking, most
somebody that you loathe. This is somebody that you would not want to have drinks with. You would not want to have a beer with this guy. You would just as soon stick something in an uncomfortable place than have anything to do with them.
The pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. So my specialty in the area of lighting and human factors results in a lot of my cases involving pedestrians. Did you write that?
Yes.
In fact, you testified, you shared that with the jury, didn't you?
Correct. Gave them an understanding of my background. There's a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian impacts, right? So
if you don't want me to say this, that's
Oh
fine.
yeah. Now he's saying, well, I can either say that or not, talking about the lighting and the darkness here.
That if they didn't want you to say something that you thought was important, you would leave it out.
Well, I think because I didn't want to confuse the jury about the statistic that just because we have inclement weather and dark lighting conditions, it doesn't automatically equal a pedestrian impact, right? We have to look at the evidence and the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to determine whether or not a collision occurred, not the visibility.
So you weren't trying to mislead the jury, you were trying to help them because they wouldn't understand something that you were trying to explain? Is that the way you're phrasing this?
I think at the end of the day was to help them understand my background, how it relates to seeing a lot of pedestrian impacts.
Something that's important that helps the jury get to the truth. Why would you offer to leave it out?
Well, I didn't leave it out.
No, but you offered to. You would have if requested. Why did you invite, why did you invite somebody else interjecting your independence and guide you to leave something out? Why would you even provide that invitation to them?
Again, it's because I didn't want them to get hung up on a statistic that just because we have more pedestrian impacts at night and in bad weather, that this alleged incident happened at night under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic. You done? Yes.
If you make a
What
mistake.
was that? What was that? He stopped. Just
Under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic.
that is absolutely done. Like, what purpose does that serve? How do you think the jury is going? How does that serve anything for this jury to do something like this?
Under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic. You done? Yes.
If you make a mistake.
That was Brennan trying to get, that's him trying to get him mad, right? Brennan is trying to get Dr. Wolf angry. He's trying to get under his skin. He's trying to get him mad. And it's not working. The guy's cool as shit.
In court.
It's just like, whatever.
Will you take the affirmative step on your own and correct that mistake?
I'll allow it.
Before you testify in a
Oh,
proceeding.
now he's gonna click him up and say, oh, you made a mistake when you said how many times you were, testified in court or
Last
whatever.
year,
So check
there was a
this out.
hearing that you testified in front of Her Honor and other people that were here, correct?
Correct.
I wasn't here.
No.
Experience with the court, it was important for the court to have an accurate understanding of what your experience was because it was being evaluated in that hearing, wasn't it?
Correct.
When you testified to the court, you testified that you had been qualified as an expert to testify over 20 times, didn't you?
I don't have the transcript. I believe I said approximately 20 times.
The reality is you hadn't. You've only testified and qualified 11 times.
Correct. I misunderstood the question. I thought it also encompassed deposition, so I added those two and approximated at 20.
And at some point when you realized you had made a mistake in your testimony to the court, you had a chance to come back when you testified last year and fix it and clarify the record, didn't you?
Correct, which is why I provided a comment with the specific breakdown for clarification.
And when you came back and testified under oath the second time, on the record under oath, did you clarify and fix the mistaken testimony that you had provided you stage earlier?
I don't recall being asked the question. No.
It wasn't what you're being asked. The question is, did you take the affirmative step to fix the misstatements under oath that you made? Objection.
Okay, so Marie Hartnett was on the stand earlier this trial and said at the end of her thing, hey, I want to go back and clarify something that I said under oath that was not correct, right? Remember that? And that was denied. So now he wants Wolf to just interject something. I mean, this is so freaking
I don't recall being asked the
stupid.
question. No.
It wasn't what you're being asked. The question is, did you take the affirmative step to fix the misstatements under oath that you made? Objection.
Of course you are. Yeah, we knew exactly how this was going to go. We knew exactly how this was going to go. That's why I've seen, more.
Oh, freaking
Exactly how
stupid.
this is done. Sounds like he says he did in fact clarify. I don't know why he's trying to impeach him with Rentschler. That's a relied on Rentschler to impeach her.
Wait, did we miss something? Oh, yeah.
Skin tissue cutability and its relation to lacerations, severe.
Right. So now he's going to try oh, this. Oh my God. Okay. You are going to be so mad at this. I am sorry, Patty, but this is the worst. This is the worst part of this thing. This is the worst part.
You appreciated that you made a statement under oath that was wrong, didn't you?
Yes.
In fact, you made a note. I realized in my testimony I said about 20 times, we asked him how many times had been qualified. I misinterpreted the question, which was my fault, but in looking at my D&T list, it's 11 trials, 7 depositions, 18 testimonies total. Not sure if you want to clear it up or just leave it. Was
Correct. Yes, sir.
Can you just leave it?
I'm not responsible for asking the question, sir.
Exactly. Lawyers ask the questions. People answer the questions. That's it. That's just, ooh. Okay, so now it gets worse. Now it gets absolutely 100%. Probably the most despicable thing, this trial, believe it or not. This right here is probably the most despicable question that Brennan has asked this entire trial. This shows how much of a slimy, weaselly jerk, and I'm going soft on the words. This is the worst thing that he's done this trial.
Do you ever heard the terms confirmation bias?
Yes.
Do you know what confirmation bias is generally?
Generally, yes.
Do you think that you suffer from any confirmation bias in this case?
No.
Do you have any close family that supports one side over the other? Not the facts of the data, but one side over the other.
Wife is FAR.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Wife?
My wife?
Yes.
I don't really know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
Your wife? He can't even ask a question. He just blurts out, your wife?
Teaching him with his wife's Facebook, really?
No, I have not.
Never seen it.
No.
Should I call his
His wife was on the I think it was on the Free Karen Reed Facebook. And, because he got attacked. I mean, he got literally attacked. Okay, not literally attacked. He got attacked online. People posted stuff about his kids. So his wife was on the, was saying, what the hell? And so she found that community. She was on that community. And so he's going to bring that out and say, oh, your wife is part of Free Karen Reed, so you can't be independent.
What her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
Unbelievable. This is so slimy.
teaching him with his wife's Facebook, really?
No, I have not.
Never seen it.
No.
What a,
Call his wife and remote hang?
I mean, that is
You're unaware of anything that makes you
insane.
to lean one way or another?
Correct.
When you first took a look at some of the facts in this case, you had some information. Since then, you've received a lot more, haven't you?
Correct, yes.
Oh my God, that's so scummy.
Opinions that you do not think that the holes in Mr. O'Keefe's clothes are consistent with some type of collision. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
In coming to that opinion, you relied on some of your testing that we saw in those videos, didn't you?
Yes.
And that testing involves a hybrid 3-arm, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
A hybrid 3-arm is an arm from a crash dummy.
Yes.
That's not the technical name, but that's what it's often referred to.
Yes.
And you and Dr. Renshaw have been working together on this case, haven't you?
Yes.
You've discussed ideas and shared thoughts.
Yes.
In fact, you've worked so intimately together, you know some of the things he's going to testify if he comes to testify, you've said many times today, right?
Yes.
And so some of the data that you shared and some of the opinions overlap with each other, wouldn't you say?
Certainly, he's going to rely on a lot of that test data, yes.
When you were forming your opinion about holes in clothes and potential abrasions to somebody's skin, all of those tests, all of those that you did, were using a crash test dummy arm, weren't they?
Yes.
In your report, you cite, or Dr. Renshaw cites, 3 different sources regarding testing clothing and skin, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, haven't you read his report?
I've skimmed it, but I don't know what the basis are for his opinions.
Did you see footnotes 24, 25, 26, 24 being skin tissue cutability and its relation to lacerations, severity indices? Did you read that?
Let's see if there's a foundation.
No, I didn't.
That is cited Forensic Pathology, 2nd edition.
I'm going to have you come to sidebar.
But it went the other way around. So,
So-
trying to impeach him with Rentschler's report doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. He's just going to sit there and.
As I mentioned, I skimmed through it.
So in all of your preparation with Dr. Rentschler, you merely skimmed through his report? You didn't take time to read and study it?
Well, none of my opinions are based on work that he did. He's undertaking a completely separate aspect in the analysis.
But that's not the question. The question I asked you was, did you, in working closely with him, take the
That's not
time
the question.
to study his report?
As I mentioned, I skimmed. I didn't read through, as you mentioned, all the references or what he cited. I didn't do that.
Did you read his report?
I did read the report, yes, but I didn't in depth go through each reference and look at what he was citing.
So you read his report?
Yes.
And when you read his report, did you see there were footnotes for a number of different propositions that he made?
I
What
know
is
that there were footnotes in the
this?
report, yes.
Well, on the issue of whether or not whether in front of this jury, wouldn't that particularly interest you since you were going to come here and testify about it multiple times in front of this jury?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You knew you were going to come in here and suggest to the jury that you thought that these tests were inconsistent with causing any type of holes in clothing similar to Mr. O'Keefe's or abrasions on his arm. You knew that was going to be part of your opinion today, yes?
Yes.
And as part of forming a valid opinion that people can rely upon, wouldn't you want to do as much study as possible on the background for that opinion before you give it to a jury?
I suppose, yes.
Well, you suppose. Don't you think if you come in here as an expert, the jury is relying
What a
on your background
fucking
and education?
jerk.
Yes.
And they're relying on the fact that you're representing something definitively, that it's important that you have proper study and foundation before you just come into court and give an opinion?
Well, I will note that the ATD crash dummy is a generally accepted test device to use for not only assessing occupant forces in motor vehicle crashes, but also to assess impact forces. So that the use of that device is certainly generally accepted.
When you get uncomfortable with my question, Judge, you generally tend to answer a different question.
Sustain, Mr. Brennan, next question. Strike that,
Let me ask you again.
What is he doing?
As an expert, it's important when you come in, and you present an opinion based on science or engineering or whatever you want to do, that you study the basis of that opinion before you give it.
Yes.
When you saw in Dr. Rentschler's report references to this very issue about what should be used when you're doing demonstration or study of what can cause tears to clothing, weren't you interested in the basis of those opinions?
Well, again, it was something where Dr. Rentschler and I worked together, and we were in agreement that we could utilize the ATD arm clothed.
When you decided to have an agreement that you could use that arm, did you read the book that he cites as support, Forensic Pathology, 2nd edition, Vincent J. DeMaio? Did you read it?
No, I did not.
Did you brief it?
No.
Did you peruse through it at all?
No.
When you decided to come to this agreement,
So he found something in some book that's in Dr. Rentschler's thing that he thinks is going to say that ATD arms can't be used to form the what?
that's going to have a foundation for your opinion.
Why is he yelling? Like,
Did you look at footnote 26, understanding the acute skin injury mechanism caused by player surface contact during soccer, a survey and systematic review? Did you review that?
No, sir.
Have you seen any articles that support the proposition that a hybrid 3 arm of a crash test dummy is appropriate to use when you're trying to provide a foundation for an opinion about whether or not tears can happen to clothing or abrasions to skin? Do you have any support for that in your report?
Well, again, Dr. Rentschler is going to be addressing the... You're shaking your head.
So I'm going to let him answer the question first.
So as I mentioned, Dr. Rentschler is assessing the injuries to the arm. Okay, he indicated to me that we could utilize the hybrid arm to assess the injuries to the arm.
So you have no independent experience or research or knowledge. Not Dr. Rentschler, you don't have any independent research or science or knowledge to support.
I was relaying the observations from the testing that we conducted with the ATD. Ultimately, like I said, Dr. Rentschler, it's my understanding that he will testify to the abrasions or the lacerations to the arm.
You've given multiple opinions about this in this jury, didn't you?
Correct, yes.
I'll ask you one more time. I'll ask you this way. Name, other than someone called Dr. Rentschler, name the papers, the studies...
this guy is such a dick.
The resource material that you relied on as the basis for those opinions. That a hybrid 3 arm can be used in these type of demonstrations as the basis for that opinion.
I certainly... ATD crash test dummies can be used for impact testing, yes.
Not impact testing. You're talking about tears to clothes, abrasions to skin. I'm asking for the third time. Name one journal, one paper, one study that supports your proposition that you're relying on for the basis of your opinion in front of the jury. Name one.
I did not cite any in my report, no.
Can you think of one that you didn't cite?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Oh my God. So ridiculous. Like, that's what you use in crash reconstruction. This is going to come up on Monday, and I bet you Rensler can knock this stuff down. I bet you Rensler's going to tear this up. Oh my God! He is so.
You had mentioned on direct examination that
dick.
when you first started looking at material some time ago, at the beginning, you were unconstrained in the scope of your study. Is that fair to say?
Are we talking about 2023?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yes.
You were unconstrained. You could have done anything you wanted to.
I don't know about anything.
When you said unconstrained, what did that mean?
Well, the agency that retained us didn't ask us to do specific work per se or specific tests.
You didn't do any type of crash test at that time, did you?
Not like was demonstrated today, no.
Instead, you started a working theory that perhaps a glass was thrown at the rear taillight of the defendant's car?
Yes.
Did someone suggest to you that was a theory?
No.
It's just something that you and Dr. Rensler thought up together?
Based on the evidence that we had, yes.
When you thought up that as a potential theory, that's why you built the potato cannon?
The pressurized cannon, yes.
Pressurized cannon. And you shot a glass at the rear taillight, yes?
Yes.
You determined that at 37 miles per hour there'd be similar damage?
Yes.
And then you came into court last year, didn't you?
Yes.
And you provided that opinion of consistency to the jury, didn't you?
Yes.
You got up and you said that something to the effect that...
So the same thing Trooper Paul did. He had his own opinion. The CW's cases, they've changed their opinion. So what?
that speed is consistent with the damage?
Yes.
So you get more info, you make more determinations.
Now, when you gave that theory last year...
Oh my God.
...to the jury, did you know about other evidence in this case? For example...
Knew this was coming.
If a glass was thrown at the back of the car, how would the bottom of the glass bounce off the car and land near Mr. O'Keefe's body?
Judge, ask it differently.
Did you consider, when you came in last year and opined, gave your theory about the glass being thrown at the taillight was consistent with damage, did you think about how if a glass was thrown at the rear taillight, the bottom would have bounced off the vehicle wherever it was and landed near Mr. O'Keefe's body?
I'm aware that it was found near his body, yes.
And knowing that it was found near his body, his body was about 7 or 8 feet off the road, didn't you?
Yes.
Knowing the bottom of the glass, the broken glass was found near his body 7 to 8 feet off the road, did you consider if somebody threw a glass and broke that taillight, cross your mind how the bottom of the glass bounced with him to where his body ended up?
No, I did not analyze that part of it.
If a glass was thrown and bounced off that car, did you consider how the speed would be hurt?
No, I did not evaluate that.
If glass was thrown in the car and broke the taillight, did you consider how the debris field would end up on that lawn?
Well, it's my understanding, I think that there were plows that came through that night, so I don't know that where the debris field was eventually found, if that's where it would have been at some point earlier.
Did you ever talk to Lieutenant O'Hara or anybody from the state police to see if the plows went all the way to the side of the yard or just down the middle? Look into that at all?
No, I did not.
So did you give any careful consideration to, if the glass was thrown and hit the back of that taillight, how there would be a debris field on the front lawn of somebody's yard?
I don't think that was a part of our scope. It was more or less to determine whether or not, if the taillight was impacted by a projectile like a glass, could you get generally consistent damage to that taillight? That was the objective of the test.
So when you came in and testified last time, you weren't considering all of the other evidence that may not support that theory, were you?
I think our objective was to determine whether or not the damage was consistent with an interaction with Mr. John O'Keefe, and could there be another mechanism to cause the tail light to break.
Is there a reason why you were backing off that opinion on direct examination today?
Objection. Assisting.
You weren't fully embracing that theory today, were you?
Objection. I'm going to allow that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
You're going to have to be a lot more clear about that one, Hank. Fully
In
embrace.
this case, you provided reports recently?
Yes.
When did you provide your report? Was it April 6th?
Oh, so Hank's going to be mad because yeah, I want to go look at her thing. Oh my gosh. So he's going to say that you provided your report after the trial started, like yeah, this is so stupid.
April 6th?
Or was it May 6th?
I think it's May 7th,
May 7th.
if I'm not mistaken.
So you provided a report May 7th, yes?
Correct.
And do you know when this trial started?
Early April?
You provided your PowerPoint. When did you provide your PowerPoint?
I think it would have been Thursday of this week.
Well, it wasn't last week.
Sorry, maybe Wednesday. Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday. Is that fair?
Yes.
In looking at
Such a
pedestrian
victim, Hank.
accidents, it's important to try, if you can, understand the exact positioning of the body, isn't it?
If a collision occurred, yes.
Okay, so this is nuts right here. He gets to ask this question 15 times. 15 freaking times he gets to ask this question.
In looking at,
I'm gonna grab water. Just watch this. This is
understand the exact positioning of the body, isn't it?
If a collision occurred, yes.
If a collision occurred, you can't always identify the exact position of the body, can you?
No, oftentimes it can be very difficult, yes.
You would want to know if it is a collision between a car and a pedestrian, whether the person was fully impacted or it was a clipping type incident. Wouldn't you want to know that if you could?
That would certainly affect the trajectory, yes.
And you would want to know, if you could, the body posture, whether the person was standing up straight or crouching.
If a collision occurred, yes.
Whether they were turning or standing straight or they had their arm out. That's helpful information, isn't it?
It can be, but when we're talking about how quickly this impact duration is, right? If you recall back to the PowerPoint, right, we're talking about a 10 millisecond window. So however the body is positioned at contact, that's how it's positioned. It's not going to be able to have any significant movement or change in orientation in that 10 millisecond window.
The position of the body can change the trajectory of the person who's hit, can it?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Positioning of the body. The way they position that can change the trajectory if they hit after they hit, can it?
It can, yes.
Whether they're moving toward the vehicle or away from it could affect the trajectory, couldn't it?
If they have some relative velocity, yeah.
Trying to determine the point of impact when you're looking at a scene, it's important with the trajectory studies to know where the point of impact is.
If you're going to utilize studies that look at projection of pedestrians when you're contacted at the center of gravity and you get projected some distance, you can rely on those studies, but you have to have an understanding of where the point of impact is and where the point of rest is.
You don't have the point of impact. If you don't know the point of impact, you don't know the exact body position. That creates variables in your study, doesn't it?
Well, again, talking about those studies, they're not applicable when you are contacting, for instance, just a limb or you don't have a center of gravity hit. Those when you're talking about how far will a pedestrian get projected, if it's like a forward projection or what's known as like a wrap projection where the pedestrian wraps onto the hood and then becomes decoupled, those studies are applicable there. But when you're talking about where there's minimal overlap between the body and the center of gravity, then you can't utilize those.
I don't want to crumble in your ear. Give me a second.
In this particular case, no, I don't think it would be helpful.
You would not want to know the body position?
I don't think that it would be helpful in determining, because again, we have to start with, does the damage, is it consistent with the collision?
This is so
You do not
stupid.
want to know the body position. That's what you're telling us. You don't want to know that.
Well, if the evidence indicates that the contact is inconsistent, then that's kind of where the reconstruction stops. You can't go to a point of impact and a point of rest if there was no contact.
So you don't want to know the body position.
Can you answer that?
There
I
is no
don't
body
understand this
position.
question, Your Honor.
When you're doing studies, you don't want to know the body position?
Can you answer that, Dr. Hall?
Again, it depends on the type of impact. For the alleged contact in this case, you can't rely on those studies about impact location and point of rest. They're not applicable to
Let's
this.
talk about studies. As far as data, information, you as the person doing tests, would you want to know the body positioning?
15
If
times.
there was an impact.
And this time we'll get an answer, and that'll be it. Can you answer that, Dr. Hall?
I feel like I've answered it the best I can, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
You don't like that question?
You don't like that question? God, man, throw a brick at this guy.
Okay. When you were doing these video demonstrations, was it important to be as accurate as possible?
Yes.
Data changes,
All right,
information
so-
changes, right?
I'm not sure I understand the
That's a
question.
tough question. You want to be precise as you can in ultimately having a conclusion regarding data, don't you?
All right, so here is where I think that they're setting him up. I think they are setting him up here.
Yes.
Hang
I
on.
have PowerPoint page 12.
Correct.
And the last two letters, MA, signifies mass, yes?
Correct.
That's a very important part of that equation, isn't it?
Yes.
If you change the mass, it can change the whole analysis, can it?
So Brennan uses this throughout the rest of his, and it gets on your nerves completely, but he comes up with this mathematical formula, he thinks, and he uses this throughout the rest of his testimony, the rest of his questioning. He uses this. I think he's being set up. I think that tomorrow with Rentschler's testimony, he is totally going to use this against it. This is going to backfire is what I think. What I think is going to happen. I
Let me
think
make it
he's
more
going to
simple.
backfire.
When you did these tests, you chose a arm from a Hybrid 3 crash dummy, didn't you?
Yes.
You can take that down the scale now. Now, when you made that choice, you knew that John O'Keefe's arm, based on the statistics and his weight of being 216 pounds, you knew that his arm weight would be 11.8 pounds, didn't you?
Yes.
And you knew that he was 6'1" tall.
Yes.
When you decided to choose an arm, in this case, you didn't choose the arm closest to his weight, did you?
It was representative enough, yes.
It was representative enough.
It was close enough, yes, sir.
Close enough. Wouldn't you want to get an arm most closely related to his actual weight?
You did.
I don't know that you can have custom-made ATDs.
You probably can't custom make them, but they have one that's 12 pounds. You know that, don't you?
Are you referring to the 95th percentile?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So there's a 12-pound arm. Mr. O'Keefe's is 11.86 according to the statistics. You know that, right?
Yes.
You looked it up.
Yes.
You didn't tell us that on direct, though, did you?
I don't believe I was asked that.
No. Instead of choosing the 12-pound
You didn't just volunteer that information on direct. What a God.
arm, which is 0.12 difference, you chose a much lesser weight, didn't you?
It was about 10 pounds, yes.
No, it wasn't about 10 pounds. It was less than 10 pounds. Let's be exact. You're a scientist. Let's be as precise as possible.
According to the spec sheet, I think it's 9.4 pounds total.
How about 9.38? You keep coming up a little bit. 9.38 pounds.
Sustain in that point.
May I approach?
Yes.
Oh, Mom's home.
Showing you a photograph. Is that
So now he's going to take this. He's going to take the fact that this arm weighs 9.8 pounds instead of 11 point, instead of 12 pounds, or 9.4 instead of 12. He's going to take this and try and reduce the amount of speed that the car is actually traveling because it's a lighter arm. I think Rentschler tomorrow is going to explain why they used that arm, because it's going to have something to do with the injuries and how they wanted to make sure that they weren't overcompensating or something. It's going to have to do with the injuries. And Brennan made this over and over and over and over again. And I think Rentschler's going to brain him with it. I do. That's my honest opinion. I really hope it happens. When I say tomorrow, I mean Monday. I really hope that's what happens.
photograph of your materials in this case?
Yes.
In that photograph, it shows the arm that you use in your studies.
It's a
doesn't it?
lighter arm.
Correct.
And it shows that arm weighs 9.38 pounds, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that is less than the 11.86 pounds of Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes?
Correct, yes.
You didn't put that photograph in your PowerPoint to make it clear to everybody you were using an arm that was a much lesser weight, were you?
No, I didn't put that photograph.
Like to move this to evidence, please?
Okay. Any objections, Mr. Jackson? Sure, go ahead and put it. Underestimating the forces involved.
The videos, right?
Correct, yes.
And you can see, could you zoom in, Ms. Gilman, on the weight? 9.26% difference, right? Before on this, it's 26% difference.
So he thinks because it's 26% difference in weight, then you get to use that 26% on every calculation, right? Like if the car's going 17 miles an hour, you get to take 26% off of that speed. So it only is going, like 14 miles an hour. He does this over, and this is a stupid Brennan thing where he gets this idea and he runs with it, and that's all there is. So, all right, I'm going to keep playing here.
No, math, weight, 26% difference, right?
I'm going to trust you. Yeah.
Well, do you have a calculator?
I do.
Can you do it?
Sure.
Okay. And before you do that, you took this from Mr. O'Keefe's 6'1". You used a crash test dummy what is the height on it?
Well, the ATD, I believe, is 5'7". The Rescue Randy, I think, is 6 feet tall.
We'll talk about the Rescue Randy later. We have questions about Randy. But let's talk about this. 5'9". You said 5'7". It's actually 5'9".
Sorry, 5'9", yes.
And it's 170 pounds?
171, I believe.
Mr. O'Keefe's not 170 pounds.
No, not his whole body.
He wasn't 5'9".
Correct.
Okay. So when you do the math and you take the 9.38 pounds based on the 171 pound doll, and you look at the percentage, doesn't it come out to 5.48% total body weight?
Yes.
Okay. And so the difference, when you look at it, it's a 26.3% difference from his actual weight, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
And so I'm probably at the 6th grade level on this, but isn't it very basic?
Don't flatter yourself.
Something weighs, the slower something has to go to have damage, and if something weighs less, other part that collides, the force has to go faster.
The force is going to be greater if the mass is greater.
So if you throw a 5-pound rock into a window, you can throw it slower to cause the same damage as you have a 2-pound rock.
I don't know if I agree with that analogy.
You agree that based on 26% difference, in order to actually be accurate, be specific, be scientific, you then have to adjust the speeds that you presented on the demonstrations, and you have to reduce the speed by 26%.
I don't agree with that.
Don't agree with that. You think that having a lighter arm, so what you're telling us is having a lighter arm will cause the exact same amount of damage
to the taillight studies as a heavier arm. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, if you look at, for instance, the 29 mile an hour impact test, that's significantly more kinetic energy. So the momentum of a 6,000 pound vehicle moving at 24 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, that's going to overcome whatever the mass is that it's hitting at that point.
You're sidestepping my question.
Objection sustained. Ask a question, Mr. Brennan. Just ask a question. No more.
My question is, are you telling us that having a lighter arm does not impact the damage in these tests as opposed to using the heavier arm?
Certainly not in the field test, no.
And so you disagree that when you look at the weights of those arms, do you disagree there's a 26.3% difference?
Yes.
You disagree?
No, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Do you agree there was a 26.3% difference in the arm weight that you used opposed to John O'Keefe?
Yes, the hybrid arm compared to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes.
And you are denying that there needs to be an adjustment to your calculation because the mass, MA, is different. You're denying that.
I think, again, if you're, and this is something Dr. Rentschler, I believe, will...
No, I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to Dr. Rentschler.
Well, because when you're addressing the forces for injury and the mechanisms for injury, right, you would account for the difference in the weight.
So you're saying that it makes no difference that you use an arm that was 26% lighter. Is that what you're saying, Coach?
No, I don't think it would have made a significant difference, especially if you look at, for instance, if you're looking at the 95th percentile hand and the 50th percentile hand, they both weigh 1.25 pounds. They're the exact same weight. There's about a pound more roughly in the forearm and a pound more distributed in the upper arm.
That's not my question. It's not whether it's significant or not. I'm asking you, are you saying under oath right now that a 26.3% difference had no impact on the calculations in that study? It would have no impact at all?
The calculations, yes, but in terms of the damage, no, I don't think that 1 pound difference. When we're talking about something that's 6,000 pounds, striking something that's, quite frankly, whether it's 9.4 or it's 11 something, it's not, you're not going to get a difference in the damage.
Why not have a 3 pound arm up there?
Well, I think that's unreasonable, sir.
What's that?
I think that's unreasonable.
What's the difference? It's a 6,000 pound car, according to you. What's the difference between 26% and 40%?
Well, I don't even know that I agree with your percentage because, again, you're accounting for the whole part of the arm that goes up to here, which we did not strike that part.
It's, how much lighter?
I mean,
how many ounces?
Sorry, what was your question?
Every time.
In terms of a percentage?
No, in terms of weight. The weight.
This guy is such a...
11.86, right?
Oh, God.
So, the 11.8 that he keeps talking about, he keeps saying, well, his arm's 11.8, his arm's 11.8. His arm was never weighed. His arm could have been 13. His arm could have been 9. They don't know that.
About 2.48.
Now, he was a big dude, so I doubt he was on the lower end. But still, they don't know how much his arm weighed.
Not in the observed damage at those speeds, no.
Please ask. Please respond like this.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Why didn't you use a 5 pound arm?
Again, I don't know that they make a 5 pound ATV arm.
You didn't tell us when you did these studies, you didn't disclose in your PowerPoint that you used an arm that was much lighter than Mr. O'Keefe's arm, did you?
I don't know that it was, I didn't give the weight in the presentation, no.
Oh my God, he is so bad. He's so awful.
Take a look at some of your tests.
This guy is
the first
just
one was a 10 miles per hour
awful.
test A. You remember that test, right?
Yes.
Now, 10 miles per hour, if you had taken 26% off, would you agree it would
He
be
does
the
this
actual speed
over,
from 10 miles
over.
per hour to 7.67 miles per hour? If you did out the math, if you did it specifically, accurately, precisely, would you agree, using the wrong arm, you make the deductions in the calculations, that 10 mile per hour test would actually be 7.67 miles per hour? Would you agree with that?
Are we allowed that?
What?
No, because again, the arm is going to get accelerated up to that speed. So that the speed would still, that mass would still be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour. Same thing in the vehicle testing. It's going to be,
horrible.
given that weight difference, it's going to be
He's
accelerated
such
up
a
to
jerk.
that speed.
Now, can we see the video of test A, please?
We can rewatch all of it, Hank. Let's rewatch all of it. Why don't we? If you're not going to land points with this, you probably should.
Oh, I don't think why he just thinks this is so.
A arm that is 9.38 pounds, correct?
Correct.
Mr. O'Keefe.
This is all he has. This is all he has. This is all he has to do anything. It's like, okay, so this is gonna come back to haunt him tomorrow or Monday. I know it is.
Now,
I know it
light
is.
on the end of this, you're trying to replicate the light on the back of a Lexus?
Correct.
If a Lexus at 6,000 pounds hits a person, the Lexus isn't stopping automatically, is it?
No, it would move at a common velocity with the arm.
It would continue to push forward through the arm, yes?
It may, yes.
And the arm can push into the light before the body turns, yes?
Since we're going so long, I'm eating dinner.
I don't know that I agree with that, no.
If the light on the Lexus, not at this speed, but if the light on the Lexus was broken or breaks and it hits the arm, it's not going to bounce off the arm, it's going to push through, isn't it?
It's going to move at a combo velocity with the arm.
And that will move not only the arm, it will move the person's body, won't it?
It may, yes.
It may push the body, it may throw the body.
I don't know about throw.
And the light, if broken, will continue to press against the arm until there's separation. Isn't that fair to say?
It could. In some instances, again, it could bounce.
It could, because it's not always the same. It's a dynamic process, isn't it?
It is dynamic, yes.
You could do the test many times and get very different results, couldn't you?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Would you get the same result every time?
I think you would certainly get similar results.
Every time?
If you had the exact same impact location and speeds, yes.
Well, that's my point. What if the impact location moved a little bit? Could it change?
Well, is Dr. Welcher changing? I don't know if, again, I was relying on what he provided.
This is not Dr. Welcher. I'm asking you.
Objection.
No, it's not.
Okay, so jurors disregard that exchange between counsel. Next question.
If the body position changed, you may get a different result. Isn't that fair to say?
I was going after what Dr. Welcher had represented in his report analysis. So we did testing to analyze his orientation that he had demonstrated in his report.
You don't like that question either?
Objection.
If the body position changed, it could change the result. True?
I don't know what you mean by body position. Do you mean the whole body, the arm? What part of the body?
Okay, let's start with the arm. If the arm position changes, it could change the result, couldn't it?
Well, I'm not aware of any other orientation that Dr. Welcher provided in his analysis report as to alternative orientations.
If the arm position changed, could it change the result?
I realize
I
it
presume
doesn't make
if
sense
you don't have your arm on the taillight, then yes, you'll probably get a different result.
because he's asking you if his expert is
In a
wrong.
different way, could that change the result?
Again, I haven't reviewed anything that indicates that there was a different orientation that Dr. Welcher suggested.
You're a scientist, right? You can think. I'm asking you. Just a general question. Over here. If you bend the arm,
Over here
could
again?
it change the result?
It could.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for not saying you're welcome.
When a person,
This is what a professional
pedestrian is
does.
struck, they are not held stationary on a harness, are they?
No.
What is this? What is this?
Yes, he's
What is this?
So pelvis?
Yes.
That's not real life. That's not how a pedestrian is usually. Right? They're not strapped to a harness, are they?
No, and again, the purpose of this test was to evaluate the arm. We're not looking at the whole body here with this test.
And when we talk about injuries, part of injuries is not just
You're a scientist. Look over here. You know, my God.
impact.
Oh yeah, over here again. Exactly. Exactly.
But when you put the dummy on a harness, restricting and restraining its
How? In what court of law besides this witch's court of law could any lawyer get away with acting like this? Massachusetts. Do not ever go to Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the. Don't go there.
It is not going to
Oh my
replicate
God.
hitting somebody and their movements, including the drag, is it?
I don't know that I agree with that because it will replicate. Again, we're talking about that impact pulse of 10 milliseconds. It will replicate that. And that's ultimately what we're after is what's happening in that 10 millisecond window in terms of the contact and the damage and the acceleration.
I know that's what you're after. What I'm asking you is when you end it, when the light stops, unlike a Lexus, and the dummy is stationary, unlike a person, it affects the aftermath, the drag and the push after, doesn't it?
Yes, the kinematics would be different, likely if it's not restrained like that.
In real life, pedestrian usually is not restrained, are they?
Correct.
In real life, a 6,000-pound Lexus, upon contact with an arm, doesn't usually stop on a dime, does it?
No.
Can I have the photo from test A, please?
Oh yeah.
And so there is no break, but there is a crack in this light that was a result of this experiment where this light hits that restrained dummy, yes?
Yes.
And this is at 10 miles per hour in your world and 7.67 if you take off the 26% weight.
Stand to that point.
In your world. I don't know why he
See?
thinks the speed is
Every single time. He's even told that that's not right. That's not how it works. You can't. He's taken this complicated physics and mathematical formula and just gone, well, it's 26% light, so you just take 20% of the speed off, and that's how. I mean, what?
going to change. Is
I'm
that what
a
Welcher is
fucking
going to say?
idiot.
Is that going to be Welcher's critique?
Now this test B, a similar test, it has the same limitations, doesn't it? This dummy is restrained at the pelvis.
Yes.
Could you show the video, please? There's two videos. We can see the first one.
Yeah, let's watch the videos again. Why not?
And was the dummy restrained by its
What
head
does
as
he
well?
think he's going to get on the show in the videos again?
It was tethered, but it was free to move.
This test you have at 17 miles per hour with the arm that's 9.38 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, 11.86 pound arm. If you consider that 26% difference, wouldn't it be fair to say that this test, rather than replicate 17 miles per hour, would actually replicate 12.6 miles per hour?
No, can you answer that?
Not the way it's phrased, no.
And so looking at this test, test B, which you say is 17 miles per hour, can you do a calculation for the 26% difference, or is that something that you don't think is fair?
I don't think that'd be a fair way to characterize it. Again, if no matter what the mass is there, if you're accelerating it, if you're impacting at 17, that arm is going to move at 17.
Well, not just the movement, the damage. If this arm was 5 pounds, do you think the test would have the same exact result?
If it's 5 pounds?
Yes.
Probably would be less damage.
It'd be less damage. So to get this amount of damage, you would have to increase the weight, right?
Sorry, what was your question?
To get this amount of damage, you couldn't use a 5 pound arm. There'd be less damage with a 5 pound arm.
Correct.
Right, because the less weight you use, the less damage at that speed. That's basically how it works.
Correct.
Okay. So, in this test, if we could run that back again, you have a restrained dummy at the hips and the head. There's no follow-through of the light or the body that's attached to that arm, correct? And at this speed, you can see the shards of taillight. You can see them move, can't you?
When you say move, you mean just...
Not stationary.
Yeah, I mean they're moving from the taillight as they brake.
Detached from the taillight.
Correct, they're braking.
That could create a debris field.
What the hell?
Yes.
And you can
Oh my God.
Taillight as they brake.
Detached from the taillight.
Correct, they're
That
braking.
could create a debris field, yes?
Yes.
And you can see them floating in the air, some of them actually floating and then touching the sweater. Do you see that?
Possibly some of it might be, again, some of that polyurethane foam.
Yeah, some might be. And why don't we play it again so we can see clearly? Some
That
might be
matters.
taillight shards
Touch
too,
it.
right? That black object spinning, that's not poly foam, is it?
No, it would not be.
That'd be taillight shard, right?
Correct.
And so, even at this speed, you can see in this type of collision, there is significant amount of taillight shards that are broken from the taillight and spewed into the air, yes?
Well, I think on the one of the slides I had, I think I showed the fragments that were left. And from what I recall, I think there was 4 pieces from the taillight, from the lens.
If you could put that back a little so Dr. Wolf can see it again, to the point of the collision. Even at this speed, go ahead. So you can see pieces, large, small, medium, maybe microscopic, are now breaking off from that taillight and being lifted into the air, aren't they?
Don't
Yes,
know.
there are pieces coming off.
It's not that many pieces, though. Just wants to replay all of these. What a, I mean,
use only an arm. Isn't that fair to say?
Correct.
You don't use a body or a crash test dummy.
No.
In fact, this is not the 12 pound arm either. This is the 9.38 pound arm.
Correct.
And when you do this test, you have the arms basically just an object suspended in the air, isn't it?
Yes.
And you said, I think on direct examination, I think you said that this is the same as if it was on the dummy. Is that your testimony?
Well, in terms of, again, the amount of weight that would be interacting with the taillight, whether it's attached to the dummy or not, what's in direct contact is going to be the same.
Well, the fact that it's just floating up in the sky like that, it's very different than if it was attached to a person or a dummy, isn't it?
In terms of how it moves immediately after the impact.
he's trying to show the damage. He's not trying to show the movement. He's not trying to show anything but what the arm would cause, what damage the arm would cause by getting struck. That's it. If you're not getting hit in center mass, then your center mass weight has no bearing on this.
Yes.
Not just how it moves, as far as the impact. Isn't it different?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Well, wouldn't you say that in addition to the arms, you had another 200 plus pounds being held down by gravity that would affect the force that's acting on the arm?
Well, the arm again is going to be accelerated, but the center of mass of the body is not going to see that acceleration.
Have you testified before in this case about the importance of the whole body and gravity?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Have you testified before in this case about the effect of gravity and the full force of a body as opposed to just an arm?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember whether you thought it important on a previous time you testified that there was significance to the arm would be attached to a 200 plus pound body and there was the issue of gravity that would affect force?
From what I recall, I think that had to deal with whether or not the pedestrian would be projected based upon an interaction with the arm or a full-on center of gravity, right? When we're only hitting the arm, we're not hitting the CG of the body.
You did test.
Yeah, exactly. Brennan is just, he keeps compounding these things, and it's so ridiculous.
B, and you claim it was at 17 miles per hour, test B.
Correct.
And we saw the damage. This is at 15 miles per hour, test C. Could you play this, please?
The arm is going to move. It's going to accelerate to the amount of speed that it is, that the object is. In fact, this one actually goes a little faster because it's not restrained. But that's what is going to cause, the damage is going to be caused.
It might be delayed, so you could fast forward a little bit, please. How many times do you think that arm spun around?
I don't know.
That's not what would happen to a person who got hit. Their arm wouldn't spin through their body like that, would it?
Correct.
Their arm wouldn't spin that many times.
No.
There'd be the pull of their body weight, yes?
I'm sorry, what's your
There'd
question?
be the pull of their body weight.
The body weight, yeah, would affect the movement afterwards, yes.
Gravity, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's a reason why you do this test at 15 miles per hour. Is there a photo related to this, to the damage to the taillight? There is a reason why at 15 miles per hour, the damage is much different than the other test at 17 miles per hour, isn't there?
Correct.
Right. Because at 17 miles per hour, you have a dummy that is strapped by a harness in its pelvis. When it's hitting the arm, it's affecting it much differently than just a arm floating in air. Yes?
No, I don't agree with that. The primary reason there's a difference in the damage is because of the amount of the arm that's outstretched and interacting with the taillights. There's a difference in those two tests.
And so the body and the weight of the body, you're saying, has nothing to do with the amount of damage?
Not in these tests, no.
So when somebody gets hit,
Exactly.
does the body weight have anything to do with the damage? Not just the area that gets hit. Does the body weight affect it at all?
Not in terms of the impact, like the rest of the body. It's not going to matter if, for instance, only my hand, like in that last test we just saw, it was the hand and the wrist. How much my stomach weighs, my head weighs, is not going to affect the damage to that taillight in that interaction.
And by the way, this test, you said 15 miles per hour. If you consider the 26%, you're only at 11.1 miles per hour. Is that the right math?
Again, I don't agree with that because if you look at the data and you integrate the acceleration data to get the speed, right, that we saw in those plots, the hand basically gets up to, I think it was 14 or 15 miles an hour. It reaches that common velocity of the vehicle.
Let's go to test F. On test F, you placed the dummy more behind the vehicle, didn't you?
Correct.
And when you test it, you put it more behind the vehicle. This is more of a full impact than it is a clipping, isn't it?
Certainly, yes.
And when you put this dummy behind the car, this was not a legitimate crash test dummy. It was a different type of dummy, wasn't it?
Yes, it's called a Rescue Randy.
A Rescue Randy. And that is not typically the type of dummy that you're going to use for crash tests.
Rescue Randy!
When you did the Rescue Randy and crash test F, did you use the 12-pound arm or did you stick with the 9.38?
The hybrid arm wasn't attached to the Rescue Randy.
The hybrid arm was not. Is that what you said, or it was?
It was not. No, not in the full impact test.
Okay, so what was the weight of the arm on the Rescue Randy?
I don't know specifically the weight of the arm. I know that the total mass of the Rescue Randy was 200 pounds.
Isn't the weight of the arm important when you're talking about impact with the arm?
I don't think relative to the rest of the mass of the body.
So now the mass of the body counts, but before it didn't.
Now we're doing a
This guy just gets, he wants to confuse everything. And if you are a thinking person, right? If you have a brain that even functions a little bit, you understand what Dr. Wolf is saying. Of course, when you do the full impact test of hitting the dummy completely, hitting the full force of the dummy, of course the weight counts because you're hitting the full dummy and not just the arm. I mean, and so this is how stupid this guy is.
If we can see in test F, we have some photographs. Start with the first one, if you could widen that, please. Now, this is a direct hit.
Correct.
Okay. Is this simply a photo or a video? Could we go to the
It's a direct hit on the entire body.
next one, please? So the Rescue Randy's placed much further in the car than the other type of test that would be more similar to a clip, yes?
Correct.
Next photo, please. Okay. And that is the result of the impact?
Correct.
Do you see the debris field?
Yes.
Is it near Rescue Randy?
Some of it is, yes.
Yeah, it's spread out a little bit, yes?
That's fair, yes.
But it's not right on his body. It's a distance from his body, yes?
There may be some, I can't tell from this photo, there may be some around his body, but yes, there's also debris closer to the Lexus as well.
And could we, and this is the demonstration where you didn't turn on the videotape, so we don't have a videotape?
Correct, we had the false start, yep.
What's that?
We had the false start.
The false start. Is there another picture after this? Those clothes.
Oh, yeah. This is so stupid right here. So here in this next little bit, Brennan gets to introduce his own reasonable doubt to the case. He introduces his own reasonable doubt. Watch.
Are there holes or tears in the clothes?
Yes, there's damage that's consistent with road rash when clothing or a body makes contact with the pavement and is grinding into the.
Those are not round, little nice, real round holes that we saw in O'Keefe's sweatshirt. These are tears. These are road rash tears.
Pavement's hard.
So listen to this though. This gets stupid.
Yes. How about frozen ground, frozen dirt?
Is that hard?
Yeah.
I suppose it can be.
Well, do you have any doubt whether frozen ground in the Northeast in the winter is hard?
It's
hard
like
to walk?
asphalt? I would have a lot of doubt
I
about
haven't
that.
done any analysis to assess that.
And so seeing holes in those clothes is what you would expect after Randy hits that hard ground, right?
Are you talking about frozen grass or pavement?
I'm talking about Randy right now. These holes in the clothes are what you would expect after Randy hits the hard ground, correct?
Objection. I'm going to allow that. Is that what you'd expect? All right, jurors, feel free to stand up and stretch.
Are you talking about frozen grass? We had our first real WTF moment from Dr. Wolf there. Wait a second. Are you talking about frozen grass?
You're talking about grass.
Or pavement?
Talking about grass.
Holes, material fraying, contact with.
Mr. Yanegi looks amused.
So holes in the clothes is what you would expect after Randy hits the ground, yes?
If there is prolonged sliding contact with the asphalt, certainly you could expect to see tearing, large holes, material fraying, and even transfer of pavement material onto the clothing.
You've done no studies on hard ground, like a front yard, have you?
In terms of a pedestrian sliding on the grass?
In clothing tears, yes.
No, sir.
And if you could go back one slide. You see the debris field is near but not on Randy? Can you tell if there's any small pieces or microscopic pieces on or in Randy's clothes in the study? Did you look?
No.
The microscopic pieces. Oh my God.
If you go to test E, please. Test E you cite as having a speed of 24 miles per hour, correct?
Correct.
And that's with a arm that is 9.38 pounds. Yes? Correct. And to remind you, Mr. O'Keefe's arm would be about 11.86 pounds. Yes?
Correct.
If you would reduce 26%, you'd be at 17.8 miles per hour, wouldn't you?
Objection. Are you doing the math, Dr. Wolf?
I don't agree with his characterization.
Okay, next question.
I understand you don't agree, but if you took 26% off the 24 miles per hour, you would come out to 17.8 miles per hour, wouldn't you?
I'm going to allow that.
You wouldn't just do it willy-nilly, would you?
I'm going to allow that.
That's what the calculation would yield.
Okay. On test E, there are
He's
some
an idiot.
differences
He's
between
a
your test and what would happen in real
freaking idiot.
life. For example, there is a harness, correct?
Correct.
And the harness prevents the dummy from being thrown naturally.
Correct.
The harness affects your ability or one's ability to see the study and see what the trajectory would be after impact, correct?
Well, that wasn't the purpose of the study, to assess the trajectory, sir.
I understand. I'm not trying to criticize, but it affects the ability to see the trajectory when the dummy's on a harness, doesn't it?
Yes.
Could we put up the first video on this, please? Photo 115, if we can start with.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and watch it again a bunch more times.
You can stop it right there. And you can see the feet aren't as firmly planted on the ground as a person would be in most circumstances because of that harness, yes?
This is so
And that
dumb.
affects gravity, doesn't it?
Affects gravity?
That affects gravity.
Well, when the car hits the gravity, the weight of the dummy is less because it's held up by a harness, isn't it?
No.
Right, so
No.
gravity really, again, is suspended at this point, just above the ground.
The arm that's extended, is there a glass in that hand?
No, there's not more weight in the hand.
So there's no object in the hand in any of these tests?
No, because ultimately what would happen is because of the accelerometer being mounted on the palm of the hand, if you had a glass there, it would interfere with those measurements.
I understand why you didn't do it, but would you say it's fair to say that if a glass was in the dummy's hand on these tests, it could affect or change the damage?
Well, if you add another, I think that the drinking glass we utilized for the testing last year, I think was 0.7 pounds. So if you add another 0.7 or a pound to the hand, that hand contacts the liftgate taillight, you certainly could see damage to that taillight, which we certainly didn't see on the subject vehicle.
So weight does kind of matter, right?
It can, yes.
Not just 0.7 pounds, the 2.5 pounds can matter too. Weight matters.
Yes.
Because that's kind of what we were talking about for the last half hour. Weight matters in these tests, doesn't it?
Correct, but you can't look at this in isolation, just between damage, and you can't separate it from the injuries, right? What's going to happen to the body in terms of the injuries in a 24-mile-an-hour impact?
Does weight matter?
In terms of the force?
And so we see this dummy with the arm stretched out.
He didn't want to answer.
Correct.
Okay, can we bring this back? Stop right there. This isn't approved crash test dummy, is it?
The Rescue Randy portion, no. It's not instrumented like a hybrid.
Is the arm the hybrid 3?
Yes, the arm is the hybrid 3.
So you took, in test F, you didn't put the hybrid 3 on the Randy, but in this one you did?
No, because you risk, these ATD devices can range from $100,000 to $150,000, and you run the risk of destroying that equipment in a test like that.
So in test F, did you put the hybrid on the Randy, or did you keep Randy's original arm?
It's just the Rescue Randy in the last test.
On F?
Correct.
This one, you have the hybrid arm on Randy?
Correct.
So you're switching up between tests. What pieces you're using, aren't you?
I would say adding, but...
Well, adding and subtracting. It doesn't have two arms. There's one off, one on. One's Randy and one's hybrid. So you're switching.
Yes.
Different result?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay.
Are you trying to say a different result between test F and this test? Because they're not the same test.
Oh, I understand. If we can have this come back a little bit more.
What is he? I mean, what in the? He's such an idiot.
Okay, and let it run. Stop. You can see the shattered taillight moving, and most of it's moving in the same direction, isn't it?
No.
Yes.
And that's what creates a debris field after a collision, doesn't it?
It's going that way, some going that way.
Yes, I mean, components will break off and fall to the ground, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, since Randy is on a harness, he's not going to be thrown the same way as it would happen in real life, is he?
Correct, and that wasn't the purpose of this test, sir.
When you chose 24 miles per hour without the 26% deduction, which would make it 17.8 miles per hour, when you chose 24 miles per hour, it's because you had looked at the text stream data that had been taken from the defendant's Lexus, right?
Fucking stupid.
And when you looked at that data, you understood that during that event, 10 seconds of data is captured, yes?
Yes.
But that doesn't define the whole event, does it?
That only encompasses what was recorded.
And you said you chose 24 miles per hour because that was about the speed at the end of that 10 seconds.
Correct.
You do realize at the end of that 10 seconds, the car, the defendant's Lexus, was going faster. It was still accelerating, don't you?
Objection. I'm going to allow it.
From what I recall, the last data point, I believe the throttle was still around 74%.
Well, ARCCA specializes in text stream data, don't they?
Yes.
Okay. So looking at that, you would agree that at the end of the 10 seconds, the defendant's Lexus was increasing in speed.
Well, we don't know, again, beyond that data point what the data is.
At the end of that 10 seconds, the car was going up, not down, in speed, yes?
Correct.
And you can't tell how much longer that car traveled for after that 10 seconds, can you?
Correct, we don't know.
So when you chose the 24 miles per hour based on the data point, it wasn't based on you believing that there was an impact at a certain speed, was it?
No, and the triggering event itself it's not a collision by definition, and nowhere in that data can you parse out whether or not any contact even occurred.
We know that.
Okay.
The point is,
We know that. We know that. Well,
how fast the vehicle was going if it was in a collision from that data, can you?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
If that vehicle was in a collision, you wouldn't be able to tell from that data what the speed was at the time of the collision.
If contact allegedly occurred at some point in that data set, no, you would not be able to pick a row in that data and say, this is where the collision occurred.
Or after that data set, you would have no idea.
Outside of the data?
Yes.
No.
Okay. And so when you look at this experiment that
You're
you
in
did,
bizarre world.
if you were to add, you said 24 miles per hour, but that's not considering the 26%. If you were to add 7 more miles per hour to this collision, would you expect more damage to that right taillight?
Potentially, yes, but you're certainly getting into the realm of injury at that point.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking you a simple question about damage. If you were to add 7 miles per hour onto this test here, would you expect more damage to that right rear taillight?
Yes.
Okay, can you finish the video?
I don't. God.
Now I want to ask you some questions. You can stop there. I want to ask you some questions. Can you bring it back to right before the collision, please? Speed changes the result of this, doesn't it?
In terms of the impact speed?
Yes, the impact speed can change the result of this, of the damage to the right rear taillight.
Oh, my God.
And the angle
Yeah,
of
let
the
me
arm
put my
can change
stuff
the
away
damage
here.
to
I'll
that
be
right rear
right
taillight, can't it?
It can, yes.
Did you take any pictures of the debris field after the impact and damage in this test E? Did you take any photographs of the debris field?
I believe so, yes.
Was it included in your materials that you provided us?
It should have been in all of the test materials that was provided, yes.
Was the debris field within a certain range? Was it within a certain circle, 10, 20, 30 feet?
That sounds about right.
And so a debris field, although it might scatter, it almost forms kind of a ring, doesn't it?
It can, yes.
And it can form that ring away from where the body lands, can't it?
It can, yes.
And in this test, which you say is 24 miles per hour, without the reduction to 17.8 miles per hour. In this test, upon impact, there is a number of pieces of taillight that shatter, isn't there?
Yes.
Did you count how many?
About 19 pieces.
Just won't let that thing go. You just won't let that 26%. So you got to reduce the speed by 26%. It's so freaking stupid.
Come in contact.
If a member of this jury, if they have a brain, if at least one of them has a brain, they're going to realize how stupid this is. They're going to realize how stupid this whole thing sounds. This 26, you got to reduce it by 26%. No, that's not how it works, dude.
With Randy's arm.
Oh my God.
Correct.
Now, Randy being on a harness, it's not like real life when the Lexus goes by, could continue to push him with it, right? He can't go with the car or the Lexus because he's on a harness. Yes?
Correct. He's not going to move from that position.
If you can move forward, you see Randy's feet?
Yes.
See the right foot?
Yes.
It's twisting, right?
Correct.
Turning. Stop. Could you show the photo of the sneaker, please?
Oh, I definitely saw it.
So, yeah, so the only...
When you were reaching your conclusions that you offered to the jury today, did you consider this photograph?
No.
Did you?
The only way that the only possible way that a shoe could end up in the road is if there's an accident. That's the only way. Did you know that? Nobody can take their shoe off. Nobody can have their shoe thrown by somebody else. The only way, yep, I got him. The only way is if you're in an accident.
You know that the sneaker was up against a curb in the area?
Yes.
And you didn't consider this at all?
Wasn't a part of my analysis.
Okay. You can go back to the video.
How does that even matter?
On the foot?
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Can you keep going?
But John wasn't in harness, was he,
The
Hank?
turn of the sneaker?
Yes.
Okay.
And his
I
shoes
want you to
stayed
go
on.
back, Ms. Gilman, please, to the point of impact. In your studies, you would agree there can be a clip of a pedestrian that causes significant damage to a taillight where the pedestrian incurs no lower body injuries whatsoever. That can happen, can it?
Well, I don't know that I would describe this as a clip to the arm. This is a full-on impact to the arm. So it's not a clip. Again, you saw it the 15 miles per hour. I think that's more analogous to a clip or a side swipe where the arm just kind of gets brushed out of the way. This, I would say, is a full-on impact to the arm.
Okay. To use your words, in a full-on impact like this, a pedestrian could be involved in a full-on impact causing that amount of damage to the taillight that's reflected in this video, but suffer no lower body injuries. Isn't that fair to say?
I don't address injuries, sir.
Well, let's play it forward. Do we ever see Randy's knees hit the car?
Yes. You see his body hit right there.
I see the foot getting run over.
Run over.
I don't think there was contact with the legs now.
Would you agree that a pedestrian could be in this type of collision and suffer no lower body injuries based on your presentation here?
Sir, I don't address injuries. Biomechanics is not my area of specialty.
You said it's common in vehicle-pedestrian collisions that there's some type of bumper displacement. You
Correct.
said that?
Yes.
Okay, bring it back to the beginning, please. Stop. Any bumper displacement in this collision?
In this specific test, no.
You said that on direct you would expect that there would be some panel deformation. What does that mean?
So if for instance, let's say the hand is not contacting the taillight or a portion of it is contacting the liftgate, you could see deformation to that body panel.
You said that you would expect to see, not that you could. What you said on direct is you would expect to see panel deformation.
Yes.
And you said in this case there was none, right? Talking about the defendant's Lexus. You said, I would expect to see panel deformation, and in this case, the defendant's Lexus, there was none. That's what you told us on direct.
Correct.
Let's watch your video. Play it ahead. Is there any panel deformation, stop, in this?
No, sir.
Okay. So when you said on direct examination, relative to the defendant's Lexus, you would expect panel deformation, there was none. There are examples, one that you gave us yourself, where there is a collision causing this amount of damage to a taillight where there's no panel deformation.
It's not the same amount of tail light.
God, what is he?
If I recall, I think you're referring to my prior testimony in another proceeding where I had not conducted this testing yet. So ultimately, that's part of the reason why this testing was conducted, to evaluate that.
In this case, the damage to the right rear tail light, there's no panel deformation there, is there?
Correct, there's not.
When somebody is wearing a hat,
now we get the
in
hat.
a collision,
Now we get to bring in the hat.
can their hat
Oh
fall off?
boy.
Potentially.
Did you look at photos? Was there a photo of the hat, Ms. Gilman?
You're so
Before you came to your
stupid.
opinions and conclusions, did you look at this photo and see a hat on the grass?
I did review this, yes.
And did
There's no other possibility now. Remember that. There's no other possibility for somebody losing a shoe or a hat. The only possibility is getting hit by a car.
you give any consideration when you did your tests to whether the hat would come off, Randy, or any crash test dummy when you hit it at that speed?
No, that wasn't a part of my evaluation.
How'd you come up with lots of
He almost wants to laugh at him. You can tell he almost wants to laugh.
What's that, sir?
So I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the photograph, but there was some material transfer from the jeans that the rescue Randy was wearing.
And so as a result of that impact, there was scuffing from Randy's jeans onto this exemplar Lexus.
There was scuffing, yes.
Did you look at the defendant's photos of the defendant's Lexus to see
Yes.
if there was
Sorry.
It's okay. To see if there was any scuffing in a very similar area?
I don't recall it being at that portion of the vehicle close to the rear wheel.
Where did you see the scuffing on the defendant's Lexus?
I think there was some scrapes along the wraparound section of the bumper cover.
The bottom part?
Correct.
It's not claimed that's attributed to the collision, so I don't want you to consider that. But did you see other scuffs a little higher up on the Lexus?
I did, but I don't know that those could certainly just be normal wear and tear to the vehicle.
Is that normal wear and tear?
This, no, because we observed it in the test.
Could I have photo 153, please? Okay. Now, this is a photo without the hatch back up. This is just the lighting fixture, right?
Correct.
And could you close up in on that? And you would agree if you went 7 miles per hour faster, it would cause more damage to that, wouldn't it?
Yes.
When the taillight is
No, it's so
shattered
stupid.
and it spreads through the air, does it have the potential to impale a person, for example, on their nose?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
In your test, you saw that upon collision, there was a scattering of taillight that broke from the fixture, correct?
Correct.
Would those shards, as they float or fly through the air, would they have the ability to impale a person on their face or even their nose?
I think that would be unlikely.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter because there's no glass in the taillight anyway, Hank, remember?
And finally, we've discussed, you now agree with me that weight does matter, doesn't it?
It can if it's significant, yes.
I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Jackson. Very little damage done there.
All right, so a little bit of a AJ redirect.
Yes.
Can we, Dr. Wolf, go back to... Can you go forward? And I don't have them memorized, so bear with me. Can you...
Okay.
Okay, if you could... Next slide. The next. Can you... Is this a video or is this a slow?
This is full speed.
Okay.
Contacting at 24 miles an hour.
All right. Dr. Wolf, that's awfully fast. Can you get to a point where you're moving frame by frame just at the point of contact?
All right, so they try to do that, but they can't.
It may be more difficult
So,
than we thought. Let me ask you a couple of questions based on that. Did you review that video in slow motion as well as at full speed?
Yes, from a frame-by-frame perspective.
And in terms of a couple of different questions about that particular test, when there's impact with that right arm, what's the speed that the arm gets to upon impact?
In test E,
Right. If the car's going 24 miles an hour, what's the expected speed of the arm?
so the hand got up to a little over 24, the arm got a little over 21 miles per hour.
The debris that comes off of the taillight, the fragments, what speed would they be going at the point of impact when they crack and are released from the taillight?
At the impact speed or less.
In order to penetrate the sweatshirt and cut the arm across, would the shards have to be going faster or slower than the arm?
They would have to be going faster. If they're moving at a common velocity with the arm relative to it, they would somehow have to accelerate with more speed to catch up and go beyond the arm, essentially.
Is that physically possible?
No.
I also want to ask you about the...
Oh, check this out. This is great. Remember, Brennan made a big, huge deal about the sweatshirt, right? And the holes in the sleeve and everything.
Do you have in your PowerPoint
Let's take a look.
photographs of the sweatshirt at the full, what you call the full-on impact? Test F as in Foxtrot.
I don't have any of those in the PowerPoint.
Okay. The photo that you showed, if I could ask Ms. Goldman to show the same photograph that she showed earlier of the subsequent to test F as in Foxtrot with the holes in the sleeve.
Yeah, the road rash. Show us the road rash.
Yes, she can.
Can you do that, Ms. Gilman?
Very kind. Thank you. Dr. Wolf, you're shown just the left arm underneath the, whatever you call the dummy, Randy, right?
Yes.
Did Mr. Brennan show you the rest of the sweatshirt?
No.
What did the rest of the sweatshirt look like after this full-on impact when he was launched on the asphalt?
Mangled. So there was not only significant road rash to the clothing all over the torso section, the left arm, the right arm. There was holes in many different locations of various sizes. There was also just on the skin of the dummy, there was road rash on the face had been scraped, the torso had been scraped, so there was significant body damage to the torso as well.
Taking just the sweatshirt, separating that out. What about the bodice of the sweatshirt, the front of the sweatshirt? Were there holes and frays and damage to the front?
It was covered in all of those, yes.
What about the back of the sweatshirt? Did that also have damage?
I don't believe the back, because I think he fell onto his stomach.
What about the other arm?
Yes, both arms did.
Were the holes and frays larger than the holes, the puncture holes that you saw on John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
They were certainly larger and again spread out amongst the entirety of the sweatshirt, at least on the front side.
Was the damage to the sweatshirt that you saw in this experiment consistent with the damage or defects that you saw in just the right arm, those 9 puncture holes on the right arm of the sweatshirt of John O'Keefe?
No, this is distinctly road rash. There's a clear distinction between the two.
Looking at this particular set of defects in the arm, is that misleading in terms of its comparison to John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Yeah. Sustained.
It's not representative of the damage to the sweatshirt as a whole, is it?
Your Honor, I'm going to ask to approach very briefly on an issue we discussed earlier.
Revisit something. You talked tribute to the difference between how it's different. Go ahead. And I understand why. It's gotta go before the vehicle.
This needed to come in because this was in the last trial. Some of the jurors said in interviews that they thought ARCCA worked for an insurance company, and then Hank earlier said, "You guys work for insurance companies, right?" So here we go.
You were asked on cross-examination about some of the work that ARCCA does on behalf of private lawyers, even insurance companies, correct?
Correct.
You were not hired by an insurance company. That's not who hired you on behalf of Ms. Reed or anything like that in the initial trial, correct?
Correct. It was not an insurance company.
Thank you.
Got it out.
A couple of more questions, if it's okay with the court, Your Honor, before we break. Okay. Thank you.
Different agency. An agency.
About the glass and whether or not the glass weighed in on your analysis of the damage to the rear tail light. Correct?
Correct.
Did you consider that the glass on the rear bumper did not match the cocktail glass that was found close to John O'Keefe's body? Or were you aware of that?
I don't think initially I was aware that there was a difference between the glass cup that was found and the glass on the bumper.
Oh, glitching.
Getting some screen glitching.
You were asked a lot of questions about the difference in the weight of the arm, and I may have, I'm going by memory, 11.8 pounds statistically as it relates to Mr. O'Keefe versus 9.4 pounds, if I got that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Are you aware that anybody has ever measured the weight of just John O'Keefe's right arm?
I'm not aware of that, no.
You were asked questions about whether or not his arm weighed 11.8 pounds. Are you aware of anybody ever weighing just his arm?
No.
What is that based on? 11.8, where'd that come from?
I don't know.
Mr. Brennan mentioned the word statistic. Based on the statistics, his arm would weigh that much. Height, weight, etc.
Correct.
Does the statistic determine the actual weight of an arm?
No, not conclusive of what Mr. O'Keefe's arm weighed, no.
As you sit here, do you know whether his arm, or John O'Keefe's right arm, if weighed by itself accurately, because pounds and apparently half pounds matter, if it weighed 11.8 pounds, or if it weighed 9.4 pounds? Do you know?
I don't know, no.
Do you believe that your testing, the totality of your testing, was dependent upon those 2.5 pounds based on the weight of the hybrid 3, or it was the arm hybrid 3, and the statistic of 11.8 pounds?
Sustained.
Back to sustained. Of course, we are confirmed redirect.
In what way does that differentiation of 2.5 pounds or approximately 2.5 pounds, in what way does that make a difference in terms of your testing?
It doesn't, and that's part of the reason why we increase the speeds to almost 30 miles an hour to look at, again, when you're bringing that much more kinetic energy from the vehicle, that's going to overcome any mass that arm has. If it, like I said, if it's a pound difference, 2 pound difference, the momentum of that vehicle moving at 30 miles an hour versus 24 miles an hour, again, kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times the mass times the velocity squared. So even if you go up a few miles per hour, you're exponentially increasing that amount of kinetic energy from the vehicle.
You were also asked a series of questions about reducing the speed of the testing by a certain percentage. Remember those questions?
Yes.
Did that make any sense to you mathematically?
Sustained enough.
How do you make sense of that, if any?
Well, let me ask it this way. Is the speed of the testing vehicle tethered in some way to the difference of that 2.5 pounds that Mr. Brennan was asking about?
No, and again, as you saw throughout the PowerPoint, when that vehicle is coming in at 24 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, at those speeds, that arm, when it makes contact, is going to get accelerated up to that velocity. It's just going to reach that common velocity. It's not going to, you're not going to somehow affect the vehicle speed due to that, the fact that the arm weighing 10 pounds roughly, and you've got 6,000 pounds. It's not going to somehow scrub off speed of the vehicle.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, I would be going through a couple of photographs and videos that might be a good place to
Okay, I understand. So they'll start today. Dr. Wolf, you have to come back Monday. All right, juries.
Dr. Wolf, you have to come back
One
Monday.
question I have for you. So I know a long time ago we told you that Thursday would be a half a day. I'm told that we're nearing the end of this case, so I'd like you to think about whether.
Hold it, we're nearing the end of the case.
Made appointments for anything like that, I'm not asking. But think about it, and on Monday, if you let Tony or Paul, whoever's with you Monday, if you have an issue with it, just let us know, and we'll just all right, so please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case.
She looks like a pig.
If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this,
That is a pig nose if I've ever seen one. She acts like it. She is the worst judge that is out there. Somebody said that the judge in the Richard Allen case was worse than her. Yeah.
please disregard it. Let us know. And again, be very careful with your social media use. Have a great weekend.
All right, the court, please.
All right. Round one of ARCCA. Now we're going to have some, that Brennan's going to come back on Monday. He's going to be mad about the arm not weighing enough. Oh yeah, no, she is. She's an awful, awful person. I just don't. How in the hell are you a judge? And that's not her natural hair color either. There's just no way. Oh my goodness. So that was a lesson in how to keep your cool from somebody that just doesn't get it. The dude just doesn't get it. So, okay, let's take a peek at this. So Patty tagged me into this. So this was from Lily Lime Online, who was in the courtroom. And we are now at 42 objections and 42 sustained objections. Only 5 out of the 42. Canoni allowed Alan Jackson to ask it different. There were a total of 4 sidebars. 2 Canoni called, 2 Jackson asked for after being obstructed with 7 objections in a row. Unbelievable. And let's see. Oh, what? Oh, I did hear something about that. Hang on. I wanted to see this other one. Is that the same one? During cross, I counted a total of 26 objections. 22 of those objections were overruled. See, if it's the CW asking for an objection, it's sustained. If it's the defense, it's overruled every time. 26 of 22. She sustained 4 freaking objections. Hank ignored the judge's ruling, asking the questions over and over when told to go on to the next question or ask it differently, without any recourse. Hank Brennan made 14 unnecessary digs at Dr. Wolf, including the same demand over here when Wolf looked away. Not one time did shithead stop him. Instead, AJ spoke up, which she then said ignore that exchange between counsel, not once reprimanding Brennan. Yeah, no, exactly. It's so ridiculous. Okay, so what do we got? Something from Microdots. Alan Jackson tried to ask Dr. Wolf to comment on Welter's inferior testing methods. Brennan and Canoni team up to prevent him with a long series of...
Go through them.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Let me ask you foundationally, was your testing directed toward determining whether or not the scenario proposed in Dr. Welcher's report was consistent or inconsistent with what you would find, ultimately?
The objection sustained.
Was your testing specifically designed to determine whether the damage to Ms. Reed's vehicle, or Lexus, was consistent with the scenario that was proposed by Dr. Welcher?
That's sustained too. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
What was your testing? What were you engaged in terms of your testing? What were you trying to find out?
Well, I think it was to, again, we talked earlier about the hypothesis, right? My understanding, Dr. Welcher indicated that the arm contacted the taillight.
Oh, yeah.
There was no analysis or testing to determine what's the expected outcome of that. What's the damage to the taillight?
So you answered the first question. I'm striking that second part. Ask another question.
Was there anything else?
I think simply put, it's to find out what happens when you impact an arm with a Lexus taillight at various speeds. What happens?
What was your understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained.
Did you have an understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained too.
What the fuck? Gee, he can't ask anything. So I heard about this too. I'm not sure. Yeah, I have to. Okay, let me make a note of that. It was on Melanie's show. So, okay, I will go back and look for that. I will go back. Yep. Making a note right now. Melanie Little. I will go try and find it. Little past notes. All right. Well, hey, we got through it. 3 hours. That's 3 hours and 15 minutes, man. We've been going forever. All right. I'm pretty sure my mom is asleep by now, but that's okay. It's probably like almost 2 o'clock her time, so I'm sure she is out. But anyway, thank you. Thanks for coming to ARCCA Day, and Monday will be another ARCCA Day, and we'll go through Monday's testimony just as much because we're coming to the end of this thing. So crossing my fingers that this jury sees it the way we do. I honestly hope. I don't. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, okay. I will be back on Monday. And everybody have a lovely night. Thanks for hanging out. Glad you got to go to Yellowstone today. That sounds like so much fun. But yes. Oh, yeah, no. Brennan's going to be even worse on Monday. I think he's going to be even worse. But Rentschler is the same way. Rentschler's a cool cat, too. So he's going to be able to handle him. All right. That's it for me. What do we got? I am going to give you Tony. Agent Tony Miller for the outro from Mistakes Were Made. And then I'm not going to get much editing done this weekend. Man, I got a busy weekend ahead of me. But we'll get it. We'll get her done. All right. Good night. Goodbye. See you later.
Introducing Agent Anthony Tony Miller from the Bureau, undermining misinformation.
Welcome to the office, huh?
Agent Miller takes the mission seriously with an eye toward the future.
Retirement, man. One word only.
You don't look that old. How long you got?
14 years, 5 months, 7 days. Give or take. Who's counting?
When it comes to finding misinformation, Agent Miller brings his A game.
It's obvious. Dude's not right. Nolan Ryan, way tougher than Roger Clemens, period.
Agent Miller is also a master of the interrogation.
I say we just let him stew for a little bit. We'll go catch some coffee, eat some food, maybe check the scores. Then we finally go in. I'll take some notes, but really they're just doodles. I'm getting really good actually at some sketches. I'll show you later.
Is there anything I can do for you guys?
Chicky nuggies.
Agent Anthony Miller, performing the mission of keeping us safe from dangerous misinformation.